My father looked me dead in the eyes and called me a stupid mistake from his past. He said those exact words while my mother sat 3 feet away, staring at her dinner plate like the answers to the universe were hiding in the mashed potatoes. I was 18 years old, pregnant and terrified, and he gave me 1 hour to pack my entire life into whatever I could carry. Not suitcases, garbage bags, because that is exactly how Warren Thornton saw his oldest daughter, as trash to be taken out. 9 years later, I was standing in my home office looking out at my 8-acre estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, when my security team called. There was an older couple at my gate. They said they were my parents, and for the first time in almost a decade, I smiled thinking about Warren and Judith Thornton, because the stupid mistake they threw away was about to decide if they were even worth 60 seconds of her time. My name is Paige Thornton. I was 18 years old when my world collapsed, and I need to tell you how I built a new one from the wreckage. The call came at 11:47 in the morning on a Tuesday. I remember because I had just finished reviewing a contract worth $4.2 million, and I was thinking about how far I had come from sleeping in my car in a Walmart parking lot. My phone buzzed with the security line, and Marcus, my head of security, spoke in that professionally neutral tone they train into people who guard expensive things. "Ma'am, there is an older couple at the main gate. They claim to be your parents. They have been here 3 times this week. Would you like me to send them away again?" I walked to the window of my home office. From there I could see the front gate on the security monitor mounted on my wall. The camera showed 2 figures standing in the autumn chill, and even in grainy black and white footage, I recognized them immediately. Warren Thornton had aged badly. The stress of whatever had brought him to my door was written across his face in deep lines and gray skin. He had lost weight, but not in a healthy way. In the way that comes from worry eating you alive from the inside. He kept checking his watch like he had somewhere else to be, like his time was valuable. The audacity of that gesture made something cold settle in my chest. My mother stood slightly behind him, smaller and frailer than I remembered. Judith Thornton had always been a shadow, but now she looked like a shadow of a shadow. Her head was bowed. She was not looking at the camera. She was not looking at anything, just standing there in that same posture of surrender I had watched her wear for 18 years. I noticed my father was holding something, a thick envelope clutched in his hands like a lifeline. I wondered what was inside. Money, documents, some kind of proof that he had changed. I almost laughed at that last thought. Warren Thornton did not change. He calculated. And whatever was in that envelope was part of some calculation I had not figured out yet. "Marcus," I said into the phone, "how many times have they come this week?" "This is the 4th visit, ma'am. Monday, Wednesday, yesterday, and now today. They typically stay about 40 minutes before leaving. 4 times. 4 times they had driven to my gate and stood there waiting for a daughter they threw away 9 years ago. 4 times they had hoped I would open that gate and welcome them back into my life." I felt something twist in my stomach. Not sympathy, something darker, something that had been waiting 9 years to feel this exact moment. "I will handle it," I told Marcus. "Give me an hour." I ended the call and stood at the window watching my parents on the monitor. My father checked his watch again. My mother still had not looked up. They had no idea I was watching them. They had no idea that every second they stood there was a choice I was making. A choice to let them wait. A choice to let them feel, even for a moment, what it was like to stand outside a door that might never open. "Mommy?" I turned. My daughter Lily stood in the doorway of my office, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, her 7-year-old face full of curiosity. She was holding a drawing she had been working on all morning. "Who is at the gate?" she asked. "Is someone visiting?" I looked at my daughter. My beautiful, happy, confident daughter who had never been called a mistake, who had never been told she was worthless, who had never packed her life into garbage bags while her family watched without lifting a finger to help. Lily did not know that the people standing at our gate were her grandparents. She did not know they existed at all. And standing there looking at her innocent face, I made a decision I had been avoiding for 9 years. Today, I would face them, not for their sake, for mine. Just some people who need to talk to me, sweetheart. Why do not you go show Nathan your drawing? I will be there in a little bit. Lily nodded and bounced away, completely unbothered. That was what I had given her. A life where strangers at the gate were just a minor curiosity, not a source of fear. A life where she never had to wonder if she was wanted. I watched her go and felt my resolve harden into something unbreakable. But before I tell you what I did next, you need to understand how I ended up here. How an 18-year-old girl with 2 garbage bags and a baby growing inside her became the woman standing in this $12 million estate. How the family that threw me away spent 9 years watching their empire crumble while I built mine from nothing. And why, when they finally showed up at my gate begging for help, I was ready to give them exactly what they deserved. I walked back to the security monitor and watched my father check his watch for the 7th time. He had no idea that every second he stood there was intentional. Every minute of waiting was a message. 9 years ago, he had given me 60 minutes to erase myself from his life. Today, I was going to give him 52 minutes to stand at my gate and wonder if I would ever let him in. 52 minutes, 8 minutes less than an hour, 1 minute for every year of Lily's life that he had missed. He would not understand the math, but I would. I sat down at my desk and pulled up the file I had been building for the past 3 years. A file full of documents and records and evidence that told a very different story than the one my father probably planned to tell me today. He thought he was coming to ask for forgiveness. He thought he could spin some tale about misunderstandings and family bonds and water under the bridge. He had no idea that I knew the truth. The real truth. About the money, about the deal. About exactly how much my disappearance had been worth to him. $2 million. That was the price Warren Thornton had accepted to throw his pregnant daughter out of his house. $2 million from Victor Callahan to make his problem disappear. I was not kicked out because my father was ashamed of me. I was kicked out because someone offered him a better deal than keeping me. And for 9 years, I had been building the kind of success that would let me look him in the eye and make him understand exactly what he had lost. The minutes ticked by. I watched the monitor occasionally, seeing my parents shift their weight, exchange words I could not hear, look toward the house with expressions that might have been hope. My mother finally looked up at one point, directly at the camera, and for a moment I thought she could see me watching. But that was impossible. She was just looking at a lens, at a piece of technology, at the barrier between her and the daughter she had failed to protect. At the 47-minute mark, my phone buzzed again. Nathan, security told me your parents are at the gate. Are you okay? Nathan Reeves. The man who had spent 2 years proving that patience was more valuable than promises. The man who had earned his place in my life, and in Lily's life not through words, but through showing up. Every single day. I typed back a quick response. I am handling it. Keep Lily occupied. This might take a while. His reply was instant. I am here if you need me. Whatever you decide, I support you. That was Nathan. No judgment, no pressure, just steady, consistent presence. The opposite of every man who had come before him. The opposite of Derek Callahan, who had promised me the world and then vanished the moment that world became complicated. The opposite of my father, who had measured my worth in dollars and found me lacking. At 52 minutes exactly, I stood up from my desk. I checked my reflection in the mirror by the door, not out of vanity but out of strategy. I was dressed simply but expensively, the kind of quiet wealth that does not need to announce itself. The kind of success that speaks through posture and presence rather than labels and logos. I wanted my father to see what I had become. I wanted every step I took toward that gate to be a message he could not ignore. I told Lily I would be right back and walked out the front door of my home. My home, the estate I had bought with money I earned through my own intelligence and effort. Not a single dollar came from Warren or Judith Thornton. Not a single success was built on their support. Everything I had built from the ashes of what they destroyed. The walk from my front door to the gate was long enough for them to watch me approach, long enough for them to see the house behind me, the gardens, the evidence of a life they had no part in creating. I walked slowly, deliberately, letting them feel every second of waiting, letting them understand that I was the one who controlled this moment now. When I reached the gate, I stopped. The iron bars stood between us, solid and immovable, a boundary that I controlled. My father straightened up immediately, attempting a smile that looked painful on his face. My mother finally raised her eyes, and I could see they were red. She had been crying recently, maybe for days. For a long moment, none of us spoke. I let the silence stretch. I wanted them to break first. I wanted to see who they were now, 9 years after they had shown me exactly who they were then. My father broke first. Of course he did. Warren Thornton had never been good at waiting, had never been good at anything that required him to not be in control. "Paige," he said, and his voice was rougher than I remembered, worn down by something. "Thank you for seeing us. We have been wanting to talk to you. There are things we need to explain." I did not respond, just looked at him. Let him keep talking. Let him dig whatever hole he was about to dig. He cleared his throat and continued, his rehearsed speech tumbling out like he had practiced it in the mirror but forgot half the words once the curtain rose. He talked about family, about misunderstandings, about the past being the past and the importance of moving forward. He mentioned that he had made mistakes, that everyone makes mistakes. He even said he was proud of what I had built. Proud. The man who had told me I was a stupid mistake was now claiming pride in my success. The performance was so transparent it would have been funny if it was not so pathetic. I let him finish. It took almost 3 minutes. 3 minutes of words that meant nothing, wrapped in a voice that expected me to forget everything he had done. When he finally stopped talking, I spoke for the first time. "I know why you are here," I said. My voice was calm, controlled. The voice of a woman who had spent 9 years preparing for this exact moment. "I know about the money. I know about Victor Callahan, and I know exactly how much my disappearance was worth to you." The color drained from my father's face. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. They had not expected me to know. They had underestimated me. Again. For the last time. But that part of the story comes later. First, you need to understand where I came from, who I was before I became the woman standing at this gate. You need to know about the daughter Warren Thornton never wanted, and the sister who made sure I never forgot it. I was born a disappointment, not because of anything I did, but because of what I was not. A son. My father wanted a boy to carry on the Thornton name, to take over the family business, to be the legacy he could point to with pride. Instead, he got me. And from the moment the nurse announced it is a girl, Warren Thornton made his feelings clear. He did not hold me for 3 days after I was born. 3 days of me lying in a hospital bassinet while my mother whispered apologies to a newborn who could not understand them. "I am sorry I could not give him what he wanted," she said. I learned later that those were the first words spoken over my crib. Not welcome to the world. Not we love you. An apology for my existence. My father owned Thornton Motors, a chain of auto dealerships that his father had started back in 1962. It was supposed to pass to a son, a Thornton son who would learn the business, expand the empire, carry the name forward into the next generation. When I arrived instead, my father treated it like a clerical error, a mistake that could be worked around if he just pretended hard enough that it did not matter. My earliest memories are of trying to get his attention. I remember being 4 years old, standing in the doorway of his home office with a drawing I had made, a picture of our family, stick figures with big smiles, the kind of thing children make when they still believe their parents are perfect. I held it up for him to see, my small heart pounding with hope. He glanced at it for maybe 2 seconds. "That is nice," he said, and turned back to his paperwork. The drawing never made it to the refrigerator. I found it in the trash the next day. I told myself it was because he was busy. That was what children do. They make excuses for the people who are supposed to love them. But even then, some part of me understood that something was wrong. That the way he looked at me was different from the way fathers were supposed to look at their daughters. There was no warmth in his eyes, no pride. Just a kind of tired resignation, like I was a problem he had accepted but never solved. Then Miranda was born when I was 2 years old, and everything shifted. You would think that having another daughter would have doubled my father's disappointment. But Warren Thornton was nothing if not adaptable. When it became clear that his wife could not give him a son, he simply changed his strategy. If he could not have an heir, he would have a dynasty. Paige will run operations, he announced to anyone who would listen. Miranda will be the face. I was 8 years old the first time I heard him say those words. I did not understand what they meant. I just knew that somehow my sister had been assigned a role that came with smiles and praise, while mine came with grease stains and silence. Miranda was everything I was not allowed to be. Pretty and charming, with blonde hair that my mother spent hours brushing and curling. She took dance classes while I learned to change oil at the dealership. She got a brand new car for her 16th birthday while I had been working weekends at Thornton Motors since I was 14. Without pay. My father called it education. He called it preparing me for my future. What he was really doing was extracting free labor from a child too desperate for his approval to realize she was being exploited. The contrast between how we were treated was impossible to ignore. I brought home straight A's, and my father would glance at the report card and say, "Good, that is expected." Miranda brought home a participation ribbon from a dance recital, and suddenly we were going out to dinner to celebrate. Her ribbons and trophies covered the refrigerator door. My certificates and awards went into a drawer in my bedroom, unseen by anyone but me. I told myself it was okay. I told myself that being useful was better than being decorative. I did not realize yet that in my father's eyes, I was not even that. I was just a placeholder, a body filling a role until someone better came along. By 14, I had a job at Thornton Motors. I just did not have a paycheck. My training started with summers at 12, filing paperwork and answering phones. By 14, I was working full weekends, detailing cars, managing inventory, helping customers when the sales staff was busy. I learned the business from the ground up, and I was good at it. Really good. When I was 15, I found a billing error that had been bleeding the company $12,000 a year. I stayed late 3 nights in a row to trace it, documented everything, and presented my findings to my father like a gift. His response still echoes in my memory. That is what you are supposed to do. Do not expect a medal. I asked him once for a small salary. Even $50 a week would have felt like acknowledgement, like my work meant something. His answer cut deeper than any insult. You live here, you eat here, that is your salary. When you start contributing something that actually matters, we will talk. I was 15 years old and had just saved his company more money than most employees earned in a year. But to Warren Thornton, I was still worth nothing. That night, I found something in my room. An envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a $50 bill, no signature, no note, but I recognized my mother's handwriting on the envelope. She never mentioned it. Neither did I. It was the first of many secret gifts from a woman who could not protect me openly, but tried to help me survive in small, hidden ways. My mother was a ghost who happened to be breathing. That is the kindest way I can describe Judith Thornton. She floated through our house like a specter, always present but never quite there. Her daily routine never varied. Wake up, make breakfast, clean the house, make dinner, go to bed. Repeat forever. She never disagreed with my father about anything, never stood up for me, never made a single wave in the calm waters of her comfortable life. There was one time she tried. I was 13, and my father had screamed at me in front of the entire dealership staff for a minor mistake with an inventory form. I can still feel the humiliation burning in my cheeks, the tears I refused to let fall while grown men looked away in embarrassment. That night at dinner, my mother quietly said, "Warren, Maybe you could ease up on her a little." My father turned his head and looked at her. Just looked. No words, no raised voice, just that cold, calculating stare that could freeze anyone in their tracks. My mother went back to her mashed potatoes and never tried again. I confronted her once. I was 16, angry and hurt after another day of being invisible in my own home. I found her alone in the kitchen and asked the question that had been burning in my chest for years. "Why do you not ever say anything? Why do you let him treat me like I am nothing?" Her hands were shaking as she wiped down a counter that was already clean. "Your father has his reasons," she said. "It is complicated, Paige." "It is not complicated," I told her. "You are just scared." She did not deny it. She just went back to her cleaning, scrubbing at imaginary stains while her daughter stood there waiting for a defense that would never come. Years later, I would learn that my mother was not just scared. She was trapped. But by then, it was too late for that knowledge to change anything. I found out exactly where I stood in my family the summer I turned 17. It was an ordinary afternoon, nothing special about it. My father had sent me home early from the dealership because things were slow, and I was wandering through the house when I decided to drop some paperwork off in his home office. His desk was cluttered as always, covered in contracts and invoices, and the general chaos of a man who believed organization was for people with nothing better to do. That is when I saw it. A professional photograph in an expensive frame, sitting right there on his desk. Warren, Judith, and Miranda, all dressed up, all smiling, posed in front of some fancy restaurant I had never been to. A family portrait. A beautiful, professional, clearly expensive family portrait. I was not in it. I picked up the frame with numb fingers and turned it over. A date was written on the back. The photo had been taken 3 months earlier. 3 months. They had commissioned a family portrait, gotten dressed up, gone to a photographer, smiled for the camera, and no one had thought to mention it to me. No one had thought to include me. Because I was not really part of the family. I was just the help. Miranda's voice came from behind me. "Oh, you found that?" I turned around. My sister was leaning against the doorframe with that casual cruelty she had perfected over the years, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Dad wanted a nice photo for his office," she explained. "He said you were not the right aesthetic." The right aesthetic. I repeated the words like they were in a foreign language. Miranda shrugged. "You know, you are always in work clothes. You look tired. It is not your fault. You are just not photogenic." She walked away like she had just commented on the weather. I stood there holding that photograph, looking at my father's smile, a smile I had never seen directed at me, and something cracked inside my chest. A small fissure that I did not know would eventually become an earthquake. I put the photograph back exactly where I found it. I never mentioned it to anyone. But I stopped believing that I could ever earn my father's love. Some doors only lock from one side. Thanksgiving dinner that year confirmed everything I had been trying not to see. We had relatives visiting, aunts and uncles and cousins who showed up once a year to eat too much and pretend we were a normal family. One of my uncles asked about our futures, the way adults do when they cannot think of anything else to say to teenagers. My father did not hesitate. "Miranda is going to study marketing," he announced proudly. "She is going to make our brand shine nationally. Paige will handle the back end. Someone has to do the boring work." Everyone laughed, including Miranda. I excused myself from the table and no one noticed I was gone. Later that night, I confronted my sister. "Why do you go along with everything he says about me?" Miranda looked at me with genuine confusion, like I was asking why the sky was blue. "Because it is true," she said. "Paige, I do not make the rules. Dad says you are just here until I am old enough to take over. I am sorry, but that is just how it is. Just here until I am old enough to take over." She said it like it was common knowledge, like everyone knew my expiration date except me. Senior year, I started making plans my father knew nothing about. I applied to colleges far from Westbrook, schools where no one had ever heard of Thornton Motors or Warren Thornton or his disappointing older daughter. I saved every dollar my mother secretly slipped me, hiding the cash in a box under my bed like a prisoner hoarding supplies for an escape. $2,340, enough to maybe survive the first few months of freedom. Not enough to build a life. But it was something. I dreamed of getting away, of proving that I could succeed without my father's business or his name or his grudging tolerance of my existence. But there was guilt, too. A voice in my head that said I owed him something. That all those years of working at the dealership meant I was obligated to stay. To keep being useful. To keep hoping that someday, somehow, I would finally be enough. The night before everything changed, my mother slipped one last envelope under my door. Inside was $500 and a note in her shaky handwriting. Just in case, I love you. Mom. It was the first time she had written those words to me in years. I held the note and wondered why she could write I love you on paper, but never say it out loud. Why she could slip me money in secret but never protect me in public. Why her love had to hide while my father's contempt got to walk around in broad daylight. I kept the money. I kept the note. I was not ready to forgive her, but I was not ready to throw her away either. I did not know it yet, but that $500 would be the difference between surviving and drowning. My mother's guilt, converted into currency. It was not love, but it was something. And then, 3 weeks into my senior year, he walked into my father's dealership. Derek Callahan. 20 years old, handsome, charming, driving a car worth more than everything I had saved in my entire life. He talked to me like I was a person, like I was worth talking to. He asked my name and actually listened to my answer. For the first time in my life, someone was choosing me. And I was so desperate to be chosen that I never stopped to wonder why. Derek Callahan looked at me like I was the only person in the room. I should have realized that is exactly how con artists make you feel. But I was 17 years old and starving for someone to see me as something other than a disappointment. So when this handsome stranger with expensive clothes and an easy smile started paying attention to me, I did not question it. I just soaked it up like rain after a drought. He came back to Thornton Motors every Saturday after that first meeting, always asking for me specifically. At first I thought he needed help with something automotive, but Derek Callahan did not care about cars. He cared about talking, about asking me questions no one else bothered to ask. What did I want to do with my life? What were my dreams? What made me laugh? He remembered every detail I mentioned, brought them up weeks later like he had been holding them carefully in his memory. No one had ever treated my thoughts as worth remembering before. "You know what I noticed about you, Paige?" he said one afternoon, leaning against the front counter while I pretended to organize paperwork. "You are the smartest person in this building, and you act like you do not know it." "I am just doing my job," I told him, trying to hide how fast my heart was beating. "No," he said, "you are running this place. Your father just has not figured it out yet. No one had ever said anything like that to me." And the sad truth is, I would have followed anyone who did straight off a cliff if they asked nicely enough. That is what happens when you spend 17 years being invisible. The first person who sees you becomes your whole world. My father noticed Derek's visits. How could he not? The Callahans were important people. Victor Callahan was my father's biggest business partner, the man behind the loans and deals that kept Thornton Motors expanding. When Warren saw Victor's son spending time at his dealership, he did something I had never seen before. He encouraged it. "Be nice to him," he told me. "The Callahans are important. Very important. Do not mess this up." I did not understand what he meant by messing it up. I did not understand that in my father's eyes, everything was a transaction, including his daughters. Our first date was not a date at all. It was a secret. Derek asked me to meet him somewhere outside of work, somewhere we could talk without my father hovering. But he was specific about keeping it quiet. "Our fathers do business together," he explained. "If this does not work out, it could get complicated. Let us just keep it between us for now." I accepted this logic because I wanted to accept it, because the alternative was asking questions I did not want answered. We met at a diner 30 minutes outside Westbrook, a place where no one knew the Thornton name or the Callahan name or anything about the complicated world we both came from. We talked for 3 hours that first night. About everything, about nothing, about the feeling of being trapped in families that saw us as assets instead of people. Derek told me his father was demanding and cold, that Victor treated him like a chess piece to be moved around the board instead of a son to be loved. I understood that feeling so completely it felt like finding someone who spoke my native language. We were both children of difficult fathers, both trying to escape expectations we never chose, both desperate for something real in worlds built entirely on performance. The connection felt genuine, it felt rare, it felt like fate. By the third date, Derek was talking about the future. "I hate this town," he said as we sat at a lookout point outside Westbrook, the city lights glittering below us like scattered promises. "I hate what my father expects me to be. Sometimes I think about just leaving, starting over somewhere nobody knows the Callahan name." "Where would you go?" I asked. He turned to look at me, and the moonlight caught his eyes in a way that made my chest ache. "I do not know," he said, "but I am starting to think I would not want to go alone." He gave me his jacket that night because I was cold. I wore it home and slept with it next to my pillow like a teenage girl in a romance movie. I was a teenage girl in what I thought was a romance movie. I did not know yet that it was actually a horror story with good lighting. 3 months into our relationship, I realized something troubling. I had never met a single person in Derek's life. Not his friends, not his family, not anyone who could confirm that the future he kept describing was actually real. We existed in a bubble, just the two of us, meeting in secret places and stolen moments. I raised the question gently one night. "When can I meet your mom? Or your friends?" "Soon," Derek said immediately. "My father has been difficult lately. The timing is not right." I accepted that excuse because I was used to being hidden, used to being inconvenient. The idea of a man wanting to keep our relationship private did not feel like a red flag. It felt normal. My whole life had been about staying out of sight, not making waves, not taking up space. Derek was just asking me to do what I had always done, but the red flags were there if I had been willing to see them. Derek never came to my house, never met my mother. His excuse was always the same. "If your dad finds out, he will make it weird. Let us wait until we are ready to go public." The worst moment came at a charity event. My father had dragged me along to help work the room, to smile and be pleasant and make Thornton Motors look like a family business with good values. I hated those events, but I went because refusing was not an option. I was standing near the hors d'oeuvres table when I spotted Derek across the room. He was with a group of young professionals, laughing at something someone said. A blonde woman stood next to him, touching his arm with casual familiarity, like she had done it 1,000 times before. My stomach dropped. I caught Derek's eye across the room, and I watched him look at me and then look away. He did not acknowledge me all night, not once, not even a small wave when no one was watching. Later, his text explained everything. "Sorry. Could not blow our cover. You understand, right?" I understood. That was the problem. I had spent my whole life understanding why I needed to be hidden. Derek just gave me a prettier reason to accept it. There was one person who tried to warn me. Rita worked at Thornton Motors, had been there for 15 years, had seen everything and everyone pass through those doors. She was 45 years old with rough hands and kind eyes and no patience for nonsense. After Derek had been visiting for a few months, she started watching me differently, making small comments when we were alone. "Be careful with that one, honey. The Callahans are not what they seem." I dismissed her warnings because I was young and in love, and absolutely certain that I knew better. Derek was different. Derek understood me. Derek loved me. One afternoon, Rita pulled me aside in the break room. Her face was serious in a way that made my defenses rise immediately. "I am going to say this once because someone should," she said. "Derek Callahan has been coming to this dealership for 3 years. You are not the first girl he has charmed. You do not know what you are talking about, I told her. I know that boy's type, Rita continued, undeterred. Rich, bored, looking for entertainment. And when he is done being entertained, she trailed off, not finishing the sentence. Derek is not like that, I insisted. He loves me. Rita gave me a sad smile that I did not understand then, but understand perfectly now. I hope you are right, sweetheart. I really do. She quit 2 weeks later, moved to Florida to be near her grandchildren, I heard. I never got to tell her she was right about everything. Month 5 was when Derek started painting the future in vivid colors. Marriage, children, a house somewhere far from our fathers and their expectations. When we are ready, we will do it right, he promised. Small ceremony, just us. Somewhere beautiful. He talked about taking over his father's West Coast operations, moving to California, starting fresh. I want kids someday, he said, his eyes soft with manufactured sincerity. 2, maybe 3. A real family, not like what we grew up with. I believed every word. I wrote those words in my journal and read them back to myself on hard days. I started imagining our children, our home, our life together. The escape I had been dreaming of finally had a shape and a destination. California, with Derek, free. He gave me a necklace on our 5-month anniversary. Silver and delicate, with a small star pendant that caught the light. Because you are my North Star, he said as he clasped it around my neck. You are what I am moving toward. I cried. It was the happiest moment of my life up to that point. And then he added, almost casually, just do not wear it around your dad, okay? Not yet. I tucked the necklace under my shirt, against my heart, another secret to keep. I wore it every single day for 6 months. No one ever saw it. Just like no one ever saw our relationship. I thought that was romantic. I did not realize it was a warning. Month 6 was when things started to shift. Small changes at first, almost unnoticeable. Derek was more distracted. He checked his phone constantly, stepped away to take calls that seemed to leave him agitated. Work stuff, he always said. My father is being difficult. I noticed that when he came back from those calls, his energy was different. Sometimes he seemed angry, sometimes guilty. Sometimes he looked at me with an expression I could not read, something that made me feel like he was already somewhere else, even when he was standing right in front of me. One night, I arrived early to our usual meeting spot. His car was already there, window down, and I could hear him talking on the phone as I approached. I should have announced myself. Instead, I listened. I know, he was saying. I will handle it. She does not suspect anything. Just give me a few more weeks. Then he saw me. His face flickered with something I had never seen before, something cold and calculated. Then the smile came back, smooth as always. Hey, you are early. That was just my dad, being his usual pain in the ass. I wanted to ask who she was. I wanted to demand an explanation for those words. She does not suspect anything. But I buried the question because the alternative was losing the only person who had ever chosen me. I buried it so deep I almost convinced myself I had not heard it at all. I found out I was pregnant on a Tuesday afternoon. The test came from a pharmacy 2 towns over because I was terrified someone would see me and tell my father. I took it in a gas station bathroom because I could not risk doing it at home. I sat on that dirty floor, staring at 2 pink lines, and felt my entire world split in half. The math ran through my head in an endless loop. 18 years old, senior year. No money of my own. A hidden relationship with a man who had never introduced me to anyone. A family that already saw me as worthless. I had nothing. Less than nothing. I had 2 pink lines and a future that had just collapsed into rubble. I called Derek that night. My voice must have sounded strange because his irritation shifted immediately to concern. What is wrong? You sound weird. I need to see you, I said. Tonight. Please. Okay, he said. Our spot, 8 o'clock. In the 6 hours between that phone call and meeting Derek, I imagined 100 different reactions he might have. Anger, fear, denial, abandonment. I prepared myself for the worst because my whole life had been training for disappointment. I never imagined the reaction I actually got. Derek listened as I told him. He was quiet for a long moment, his face unreadable. I braced for the explosion, for the rejection, for the end. Instead, he pulled me into his arms. "We will figure this out," he said. "Together. This just moves up our timeline, that is all." He talked about California, about marriage, about raising our child far from our fathers and their expectations. He said all the right things in all the right ways, and I melted into his arms with relief so overwhelming I could barely breathe. He was not leaving. He was staying. I was not alone. "Just give me 2 weeks to set some things up," Derek said. "Do not tell anyone until I have a plan." "Can you do that for me?" I agreed. Of course I agreed. I would have agreed to anything in that moment. He held me for an hour that night, kissed my forehead, told me everything was going to be okay, and I believed him. Because I needed to. Because the alternative was admitting that I had built my entire future on quicksand. Because after 17 years of being told I was worthless, I was desperate to believe that someone thought I was worth staying for. 2 weeks before I planned to tell my father about the pregnancy, Derek asked me to meet him at our usual spot. I went there expecting to hear his plan for our future, expecting to finally step into the life he had been promising for 6 months. His face when I arrived told me everything his words were about to destroy. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw Derek's face. His smile was there, but it had been emptied out, like a house with all the furniture removed. He was leaning against his car at our usual spot, the lookout point where he had first talked about running away together, but he did not come to greet me like he always did. He just stood there with his hands in his pockets, watching me approach like I was a stranger he was about to deliver bad news to. The sunset was bleeding red across the sky. I remember thinking it looked like a wound. I remember my feet feeling heavier with every step, my body understanding something my mind refused to accept. I remember the gravel crunching under my shoes, the only sound in a silence that felt like suffocation. "Hey," I said when I reached him. "Is everything okay? You sounded weird on the phone." He finally looked at me, really looked at me, and whatever I saw in his eyes made my stomach drop through the floor. "We need to talk," he said. "Those are never good words," I replied, trying to smile, trying to pretend this was not happening. Derek did not smile back. He did not soften. He just started talking, and within 30 seconds, everything I thought I knew about my life became a lie. He did not ease into it, did not soften the blow. He just detonated the bomb and stood there watching me burn. The words came out rehearsed, clinical, detached, like he had practiced them in front of a mirror until all the emotion had been stripped away. He was engaged. Had been engaged for 8 months. Her name was Brooke Whitmore, daughter of a major investor. The engagement had been arranged by his father as a business merger disguised as a wedding. 8 months. We had been together for 6. He was engaged before we ever started. I stood there trying to process the math while my world collapsed around me. 8 months engaged, 6 months with me. I was never the main story. I was the subplot he planned to delete before publication. "I thought I could figure something out," Derek was saying, his voice flat and emotionless. "But my father has been pressuring me. The wedding is in 3 months. I cannot walk away from this. You do not understand what he would do to me." My hands moved instinctively to my stomach. The baby, our baby, the future he had painted in such vivid colors just 2 weeks ago. "I am pregnant, Derek." I said the words like they might change something, like reminding him might wake him up from whatever nightmare he had fallen into. "With your child." He looked away, actually looked away, like my pregnancy was an inconvenience he did not want to face directly. "I know," he said, "and I am sorry. But this is not something I can walk away from. Brooke's family, my father, they would destroy me. You need to handle this quietly. My father cannot know. Handle this." Like our baby was a spill on the carpet, like the life growing inside me was a mess to be cleaned up before anyone important noticed. And then I saw it. The mask slipping, revealing something I had never glimpsed in 6 months of loving him. The charming boyfriend who had promised me the world was gone. In his place was someone cold and entitled, and slightly annoyed that this conversation was taking so long. He checked his watch. Actually checked his watch while I stood there crying, while I stood there begging him to remember the promises he had made. He checked his watch to see if he was late for something more important. "I need to go," he said. "Brooke is expecting me for dinner." The name cut through me like glass. Brooke. His real girlfriend, his fiancée. The woman he went home to while I wore his secret necklace against my heart and dreamed about California. "I will send you some money," Derek continued, "for whatever you decide to do. Just do not contact me again. Do not come to the dealership. Do not call my phone. It is better for everyone if we just never happened." He reached for my hand. Some instinct of practiced charm, maybe. Some reflex from 6 months of playing the devoted boyfriend. I pulled away so hard I almost fell. "Do not touch me," I said. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance, I think. Or maybe just impatience. "Do not make this harder than it needs to be, Paige." He got in his car. He drove away. He did not look back. Not once. I stood there alone as the sun finished bleeding out across the horizon, trying to remember how to breathe. The necklace he had given me, the North Star he said I was to him, suddenly felt like it was burning a hole through my chest. I ripped it off and threw it as far as I could into the gathering darkness. Then I stood there crying, wanting to go find it, knowing I never would. The drive home is a blur. I do not remember steering or stopping at lights or anything about the 30 minutes between the lookout point and my parents' driveway. I just remember arriving, still breathing somehow, unsure how that was possible. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn off the engine. I sat in the car for a long time trying to figure out what to do next. Derek was gone. California was gone. The future was gone. I was 18 years old, pregnant, and completely alone. The only option I could think of was telling my parents. Maybe my father would be angry, but he was practical. He was a businessman. Maybe he would see this as an opportunity to distance himself from the Callahans. Maybe he would finally choose me over a deal. I walked into the house with that desperate hope holding me together. My family was eating dinner when I ended life as I knew it. Warren at the head of the table, Judith serving seconds, Miranda scrolling through her phone with the casual boredom of a 16-year-old who had never had to worry about anything in her life. No one looked up when I came in. No one asked why my eyes were red or why my hands were trembling. I sat down at my usual place and stared at the pot roast on my plate, trying to find the words that would change everything. "Are you feeling all right, Paige?" My mother's voice cut through the silence. "You look pale." "She is probably tired from pretending to work all day," Miranda said without looking up from her phone. My father said nothing, just kept eating like I was not even there. "I need to tell you something," I said. My voice came out strange, hollow, like it belonged to someone else. No one stopped eating. Miranda kept scrolling. My father reached for more bread, like whatever I had to say could not possibly be important. I said it louder. "I need to tell you something." Finally, attention. Miranda looked up from her phone with an expression of annoyed curiosity. My mother's fork paused halfway to her mouth. My father set down his bread and looked at me with those cold, calculating eyes that had been measuring my worth and finding it lacking for 18 years. "I am pregnant." The silence that followed was absolute. Total. Like all the air had been sucked out of the room. My father's face went through several stages. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something cold and hard settled into his features. Something I had never seen before in 18 years of trying to earn his approval. Miranda's reaction was different. At the edge of my vision I caught something that looked almost like satisfaction. A small smile at the corners of her mouth, quickly hidden. Like she had been waiting for this moment. like she had known it was coming. My father set down his fork with surgical precision. The sound of metal on ceramic was somehow louder than a scream. "Whose is it?" he asked. "Not are you okay? Not how are you feeling, not even how did this happen? Just whose is it?" Like the identity of the father was the only variable that mattered in his calculation. I hesitated. I knew what would happen when I said the name. I knew it would make everything worse. But I had no more lies left in me, no more energy to protect someone who had just thrown me away. "Derek Callahan," I said. My father's expression did not change, did not shift, did not show surprise or anger or anything human at all. He just nodded slowly like I had confirmed something he already suspected, and reached for his phone. "Warren," my mother said, her voice small and frightened. "What are you doing?" "Quiet," he said without looking at her. He dialed a number and walked into the living room, leaving me sitting at the table with my silent mother and my smirking sister, listening to fragments of a conversation that would determine my fate. "Victor." "Yes." "We have a situation. Your son. My daughter. I think we need to discuss how to handle this." I sat there trying to understand what was happening. My father was calling Victor Callahan, Derek's father, the man whose money and influence had been propping up Thornton Motors for years. I had expected anger. I had expected disappointment. I had not expected negotiation. He returned 5 minutes later. His face was set like concrete. "Victor is coming over," he announced. "We are going to discuss this like adults, like businessmen." Businessmen. The word hit me like a physical blow. "Dad, I am your daughter. I am not a business problem." He looked at me then, really looked at me. And what I saw in his eyes was not anger or disappointment, or even disgust. It was calculation. Pure, cold calculation. The look of a man assessing the value of an asset and deciding whether to buy or sell. "Right now," he said, "you are both." My mother reached for my hand under the table. Her fingers were ice cold and trembling. I grabbed onto her like a lifeline, desperate for any human connection. Any sign that someone in this room still saw me as a person and not a problem to be solved. Miranda watched everything with bright, hungry eyes, like she was enjoying a show. Victor Callahan arrived in 20 minutes. He walked into our house like he owned it. Looking back, maybe he already did. He was tall and silver-haired, wearing an expensive suit that probably cost more than everything in my closet combined. His eyes were dead. Shark eyes. The eyes of a man who had spent 50 years treating people as obstacles to be removed. He did not acknowledge me, did not look at me, did not spare a single glance for the teenage girl carrying his grandchild. He spoke only to my father, as if I was not even in the room. The negotiation was brief and brutal. Derek would deny everything. If I went public, if I tried to claim anything, the Callahans would destroy Thornton Motors, pull all business, spread rumors, call in every favor they had accumulated over decades of climbing to the top. My father listened to all of this without expression, without objection, without any sign that he was defending his daughter rather than considering a business proposal. Then Victor made his offer. "Make this go away cleanly," he said, "and I will make it worth your while. Expand our partnership. Exclusive contracts. Let us say $2 million over 5 years. Consider the debt you already owe me cleared as well, $2 million. And the debt cleared. I did not even know my father owed Victor money. But suddenly the pieces were clicking together, the pressure, the fear, the way my father had encouraged me to be nice to Derek Callahan. I had been set up. Maybe not deliberately, but I had been useful. And now that I was inconvenient, I was being sold. My father actually considered it. I watched him think, watched him weigh the numbers, watched him calculate the value of his daughter against the value of $2 million and find me wanting. "She has 1 hour to pack," he said finally. Victor nodded, stood, left without another word, like the transaction had been completed to his satisfaction. My father turned to face me, and the words he said next have been carved into my memory with a knife. "You are just a stupid mistake I should have fixed 18 years ago. You have 1 hour to get out of my house." I looked at my mother, begged her with my eyes to say something, to stop this, to choose me just this once. She opened her mouth. For one heartbreaking second, I thought she was going to speak, going to stand up, going to fight for me. My father's glare hit her like a physical force. Her mouth closed, her eyes dropped. Her hand went limp in mine. She had made her choice, again. I walked upstairs in shock, packed my life into 2 garbage bags because my father would not let me use the suitcases. "Those belong to this family," he said, and I was no longer part of it. My mother appeared at my door just once. She pressed cash into my hand. $500, the emergency money she had been saving in secret. "I am sorry," she whispered, so quietly I almost did not hear it. Then she was gone. Back downstairs. Back to the husband she had chosen over her daughter. Miranda appeared in my doorway as I was finishing. She leaned against the frame with her arms crossed and that same satisfied smile from dinner. "You should have known your place," she said. I did not respond. Could not respond. Just carried my garbage bags down the stairs, past my father who was already on the phone discussing his expanded partnership with Victor, past my sister who watched me leave with triumph in her eyes, past my mother who sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 9:47 as I walked out the front door. No one said goodbye. I loaded my life into my car and drove into the darkness. 18 years old, pregnant, alone, erased. I did not know where I was going. Did not know how I would survive. Did not know anything except one thing. I would never let my child feel what I felt walking out that door. I would never let my baby grow up wondering if they were wanted. I would never throw away the life growing inside me the way everyone I had ever trusted had thrown away me. That was the only thought I had as the house disappeared in my rearview mirror. The only thing holding me together as I drove toward a future I could not see. Whatever came next, I would survive it. I had to. For both of us. I spent my first night as a homeless pregnant teenager in the parking lot of a closed Walmart, watching the moon through my windshield and wondering if disappearing was really as easy as my father made it look. I had driven for 2 hours with no destination, just putting miles between myself and the house that was no longer my home, until I ended up in Hartford. Far enough that no one knew my name. Close enough that my gas tank survived the journey. I could not bring myself to go inside anywhere. Could not walk into a shelter and admit that I was one of those people. The ones my father used to point at and say that is what happens when you have no ambition. So I parked in the corner of the lot, reclined my seat as far as it would go and tried to sleep. Sleep did not come. Every sound was a threat. Every shadow was someone coming for me. Every car that passed made me flinch lower in my seat, terrified that somehow my father had sent someone to find me, to finish erasing me. Around 2 a.m, I took inventory of my situation. $847. That was everything I had. My savings from years of secret hoarding plus the $500 my mother had pressed into my hand on my way out the door. $847, 2 garbage bags of clothes, half a tank of gas, and a baby growing inside me. The math of survival ran through my head over and over. $847 would not last a month, not with rent and food and prenatal care. I needed a plan. I could not think of one. Around 3 a.m, a knock on my window nearly stopped my heart. I sat up so fast I hit my head on the roof, already reaching for the keys in the ignition, ready to drive away from whatever threat had found me. But when I looked through the glass, I saw a security guard, an older man with a kind face and a flashlight. He was not pointing at me. He gestured for me to roll down the window. I hesitated, then lowered it just a few inches. "Shelter on Oak Street opens at 7, he said quietly. His voice was gentle. Not judging, not threatening, just informing. You look like you could use a real bed. He handed me a bottle of water through the crack in the window. Then he walked away without another word. A stranger showing me more kindness in 10 seconds than my father had in 18 years. I sat there holding that water bottle like it was made of gold, crying for the first time since I drove away from everything I knew. Not because I was sad. Because someone had seen me sitting in a dark parking lot with my life in garbage bags, and their first instinct was to help. The Hartford Women's Shelter looked exactly like the kind of place my father would have called where people with no ambition end up. Old brick building, barred windows, a faded sign that read Hartford Women's Crisis Center. I sat in the parking lot for 40 minutes after it opened, almost leaving 3 times, my hand on the gear shift ready to drive somewhere else, anywhere else. But there was nowhere else. So I swallowed my pride and walked through the front door. The inside was fluorescent lights and plastic chairs and women who looked as lost as I felt. Everyone avoided eye contact. Everyone had a story they did not want to tell. I understood that immediately. I did not want to tell mine either. A young volunteer at the front desk handed me forms to fill out. The questions felt like accusations. Emergency contact? None. Current address? Car? Income? 0. Previous employment? I wrote Thornton Motors and then scratched it out so hard I tore the paper. I was not connected to that name anymore. I was not connected to anything anymore. I wrote N.A. so many times the letters started to blur. Are you in immediate danger from a partner or family member? The volunteer asked, reading from a checklist. I did not know how to answer that. My father had thrown me out, but he had not hit me. Derek had abandoned me, but he had not threatened me. Was I in danger? I was pregnant and homeless with $800 to my name. That felt dangerous, but not in the way the question meant. I do not know how to answer that, I admitted. The volunteer nodded like she had heard that answer before. Let me get Ms. Dolores, she said. She runs this place. She will know what to do with you. I did not know it yet, but the name Ms. Dolores was about to become the most important name in my life. More important than Thornton, more important than Callahan, more important than anyone who shared my blood. Dolores Washington was 62 years old, 5 feet 3 inches tall, and absolutely terrifying in the best possible way. She walked into the lobby like she owned not just this building, but the entire city block, with reading glasses on a chain around her neck and eyes that had seen everything and been surprised by nothing. She took one look at me, at my garbage bags, at my red eyes, at my hand unconsciously resting on my stomach. How far along? She asked without preamble. I blinked, startled. I had not mentioned the pregnancy to anyone. Ms. Dolores almost smiled. Honey, I have been doing this for 31 years. I can spot pregnant before the test can. She led me to her office without waiting for an answer. The room was cluttered and warm, every wall covered with photographs. Women and babies, women and diplomas, women standing in front of houses and businesses and cars. Hundreds of faces looking out at me from their frames. Former residents, Ms. Dolores explained, following my gaze. Every single one of them sat where you are sitting now. I looked at all those faces, all those women who had walked through the same door I had just walked through, who had filled out the same forms with the same shaky handwriting, and they had survived. They had built something. They had gotten out. So, Ms. Dolores said, settling into her chair behind the desk, you want to tell me how a girl with clean fingernails and good teeth ended up in my lobby with her life in garbage bags? My father kicked me out, I said. The words felt strange coming out of my mouth, like they belonged to someone else's story. Because of the baby? Because of the baby's father? And because I was never what he wanted anyway. Ms. Dolores studied me for a long moment. Her eyes were sharp but not unkind, assessing but not judging. Well, she said finally, that is his loss, is it not? Now, you have got 2 choices, sweetheart. She leaned back in her chair and looked at me like I was a puzzle she was deciding whether to solve. Choice 1. You can sit in this shelter feeling sorry for yourself. Wait for someone to come save you. Let the bitterness eat you alive while you blame everyone else for your problems. I have seen that kind of woman come through here. She stays stuck. Sometimes she leaves. Sometimes she ends up back here 5 years later with another baby and the same empty eyes. She paused. Let that sink in. Choice 2. You get up every single day and do the next right thing. You work harder than you have ever worked in your life. You take every opportunity that comes your way, even the ones that seem too small to matter. And you prove every single person who threw you away absolutely wrong. I have seen that kind of woman too. She sends me Christmas cards from houses she bought herself. The words settled into my chest like stones. Heavy, real, undeniable. What if I cannot do it? I asked. What if I fail? Then you fail, and you get up the next day and try again. Failure is not fatal, sweetheart. Quitting is. I felt something shift inside me. Something small but significant. Like a pilot light catching in a furnace that had been cold for years. You do not even know me, I said. Why do you care what happens to me? Ms. Dolores softened for the first time since I had met her. Because 34 years ago, someone cared what happened to me. And I am still paying that debt forward. She had been exactly where I was. Pregnant, alone, thrown away. She had chosen door number 2. And she had spent 3 decades opening that same door for others. My bed at the shelter was a bottom bunk in a room with 7 other women. It was the most grateful I had ever been for anything in my entire life. The mattress was thin, the pillow was flat, the sheets smelled like industrial detergent. None of that mattered. I was indoors. I was safe. I was not alone. That first night I lay awake listening to the sounds of the shelter. Someone crying softly 2 bunks over. Someone talking in their sleep. The building settling around us like a grandmother's bones creaking. Every woman here had a story as painful as mine. Maybe more. I was not special in my suffering. There was strange comfort in that. The next morning I met Teresa. She was in her 40s with tired eyes and rough hands, standing at the sink next to mine in the communal bathroom. First day? She asked. I nodded. It gets easier, she said. Or maybe you just get stronger. Hard to tell the difference after a while. She handed me a toothbrush. Brand new, still in the package. Someone gave me one on my first day, she explained. Pass it on when it is your turn. I kept that toothbrush long after I had money to buy 100 of them. It sits in a drawer in my estate now. A reminder of what kindness looks like when you have nothing to offer in return. Finding a job while pregnant, homeless, and using a shelter as your address turns out to be exactly as impossible as it sounds. I applied everywhere. Retail, food service, cleaning, office work, anywhere that might hire a teenager with no references and no address and a baby on the way. The rejections came fast and frequent. We will call you. We are not hiring right now. We are looking for someone with more experience. One manager told me directly that they could not hire someone in my condition, like pregnancy was a disease, like the life growing inside me made me unemployable. By day 12, I had been rejected 14 times. I came back to the shelter that afternoon and sat on my bunk and cried for the first time since the Walmart parking lot. Teresa found me there, mascara running down my cheeks, hope bleeding out with every tear. How many today? She asked. 3 rejections. In 4 hours. That is 3 more chances than you had yesterday. Tomorrow you will have 3 more. What if no one ever says yes? Then you keep asking until someone does. That is the only math that matters. On day 14, I had 1 interview left. A small commercial real estate office I had almost not applied to because I thought I was not qualified. The job was receptionist. $11 an hour, answer phones, file paperwork, make coffee, nothing glamorous, nothing that would change the world. The office was small, tucked between a laundromat and a tax preparer, with a sign that said, Wexler and Associates Commercial Real Estate. I walked in expecting rejection. I walked out with a future. Arthur Finley was in his mid-50s, with a rumpled suit and kind eyes, and the look of a man who had seen enough of the world to stop being surprised by it. He noticed my shelter address on the application, noticed my pregnancy, noticed my complete lack of references. Instead of rejecting me, he asked a question no one else had thought to ask. Why do you want this job? The real answer: because I need to prove that I can build something on my own. Because everyone I have ever trusted has decided I am worthless. And I am not. Arthur studied me for a long moment. Then he looked at my application again. You worked at an auto dealership, he said. What did you do there? Everything: phones, filing, inventory, customer service, billing. I found a $12,000 error in the books once. And they let you go? I paused. It was my father's dealership. He did not let me go. He threw me away. Arthur nodded slowly. Then he picked up a stamp and pressed it onto my application. The word hired appeared in red ink. You start Monday, he said. 8 a.m. Do not be late. Arthur Finley did not save me out of pity. He saved me because he saw something no one else bothered to look for. Years later, I would ask him what made him take a chance on a pregnant teenager from a homeless shelter. His answer broke my heart and rebuilt it at the same time. 2 weeks after I started, I held my first paycheck in my hands. $342 after taxes. Ms. Dolores had a rule: 70% of everything you earn goes into savings, 30% for personal needs. I did the math immediately. $239 for the future. $103 for the present. I bought prenatal vitamins, 2 shirts for work, and a notebook for writing down everything I was learning. Then I walked to a bank and opened an account in my name only. First deposit $239. Starting balance of the rest of my life. I taped the receipt to the wall above my bunk that night. It was not much. It was not even close to enough. But it was mine. Every cent of it. And for the first time since my father called me a stupid mistake, I felt like something else entirely. A beginning. 3 months into my job, I discovered something about the real estate industry that would change everything. And it started with a conversation I was not supposed to hear. The conversation that changed my life happened through a wall I was not supposed to be listening through. I was 3 months into my job at Wexler & Associates, filing paperwork in the storage room adjacent to Arthur's office, when I heard him talking on the phone about numbers that made me stop breathing. He was discussing a commercial property deal with a client. A building purchased for $1.2 million, repositioned over 18 months, then sold for $3.4 million. I stood there among the dusty file cabinets doing the math in my head. That was $2.2 million in profit. On a single deal. On one building. I thought about my father's dealership. The grinding. The endless work. The thin margins that kept him stressed and angry year after year. Thornton Motors probably did not clear $2.2 million in 5 years of selling cars. And this man on the other side of the wall had just made that much by buying something, improving it, and selling it to someone else. This was different. This was wealth built through knowledge, not labor. Through strategy, not sweat. And I wanted to understand how it worked. I started listening more carefully after that. Every phone call Arthur made, every meeting he held, every conversation that drifted through the thin walls of that cramped office. I kept a notebook hidden in my desk drawer and wrote down every term I did not understand, every concept that seemed important, every number that made my eyes widen. Cap rates, net operating income, lease structures, tenant mix, value-add opportunities. The language of commercial real estate was foreign to me at first, like trying to learn a new alphabet. But I had spent my whole life learning things faster than people expected. My father had called that being useful. I was starting to realize it might be something more. I became a spy in my own workplace, stealing knowledge instead of files. I arrived early every morning and stayed late every night, not just to prove my work ethic, but to absorb everything happening around me. When Arthur left deal memos on his desk, I memorized them. When clients came in to discuss properties, I listened from the next room and took notes. When the office was empty, I pulled books from Arthur's shelves and read until my eyes ached. Ms. Dolores noticed the books I was bringing back to the shelter. Heavy textbooks on real estate investment and market analysis, borrowed from the Hartford Public Library and read by flashlight after curfew. "What are you doing with all that?" she asked one night, finding me hunched over a chapter about commercial lease negotiations. "Learning how to never be poor again," I told her. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Good. Keep going." Arthur started noticing too. I could not hide my intelligence forever, not when I kept asking questions that receptionists were not supposed to ask. One afternoon, he left a deal memo on my desk. Accidentally, he claimed. But when I brought it back to him, he did not take it. "Did you read it?" he asked. I hesitated, then decided honesty was worth more than caution. "Yes, I am sorry. I know I should not have." "What did you think?" The question surprised me. No one had ever asked my opinion about anything important. I could have deflected, apologized again, gone back to answering phones like I was supposed to. Instead, I told him the truth. "I think the asking price is too high. The building's occupancy rate is 72%, but the seller's valuation assumes 90. If you offered based on current income instead of projected, you would save about $300,000. Arthur stared at me. I waited for him to tell me to mind my own business, to stay in my lane, to remember that I was just a receptionist with no degree and no experience. "How far along are you in that pregnancy?" he asked instead. 7 months. When you come back from maternity leave, we are going to have a different conversation about your job here." He did not say what the conversation would be, but for the first time, I let myself imagine something beyond answering phones and filing papers. Something beyond surviving. Something like actually building a future. My mother found me 6 months after I left Westbrook. I still do not know how she tracked me down. Maybe she hired someone. Maybe she begged Miranda to help. Maybe mothers just know things about their children that cannot be explained by logic. The letter arrived at the shelter on a Tuesday afternoon. Plain white envelope, no return address, but I recognized Judith's handwriting immediately. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was $500 in cash, and a single page covered in my mother's careful script. The words blurred as I read them, tears falling before I could stop them. She apologized. Not for everything, because some things are too big to fit into an apology. But she tried. She said she thought about me every day. She said she had started saving money in secret, hiding it where Warren would never look. She said she knew sorry was not enough, but she needed me to know she had not forgotten me. She asked me to write back. I sat on my bunk holding that letter for an hour. Teresa found me there, still staring at the paper like it might change into something else if I looked long enough. "Bad news?" she asked. "My mother, she sent money. That is good, is it not? She also let my father throw me out without saying a word. This is guilt money." Teresa sat down on the edge of my bed. "Guilt money spends the same as any other kind," she said quietly. She said she is sorry, that she was not brave enough. Teresa nodded slowly. Being sorry and being brave are two different things. Only one of them changes anything. I kept the letter, threw away the envelope so no one could trace where it came from. I was not ready to forgive my mother, but I was not ready to forget her either. I added her $500 to my savings and did not write back. Lily came into the world on a Tuesday in March, and I was completely alone when it happened. My water broke at 2 a.m. in the shelter bathroom. Ms. Dolores drove me to the hospital in her ancient Honda, the only person in the world who knew I was about to become a mother. Labor lasted 18 hours. 18 hours of pain and fear and exhaustion, made worse by the absence of everyone who should have been there. No mother holding my hand, no father pacing in the waiting room, no boyfriend timing contractions and telling me I was doing great. Somewhere around hour 12, when the pain was at its worst and I was losing my grip on everything, I called out for my mother. The word just came out of me, instinctive and desperate. Mama. Like I was a child again, sick with fever, needing someone to make it better. Ms. Dolores squeezed my hand tighter. "I am here," she said. "You are not alone." But I was alone. That was the truth of it. The nurses were kind but busy. The doctors were professional but detached. I was just another young mother without a support system, another sad story passing through the maternity ward. At hour 16, I almost gave up. I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open, so scared I could not stop shaking, so certain that I was not strong enough to do this. "You are almost there," Ms. Dolores told me. "This is the hardest thing you will ever do, and you are doing it." "I do not know if I can," I whispered. "You can. You will. Because that baby does not have anyone else. And that means you are going to be everything." I pushed. I screamed. I pushed again. And then she was here. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Screaming at the world. My daughter, my Lily. The moment the nurse placed her on my chest, everything else disappeared. The pain, the fear, the 18 hours of agony. None of it mattered anymore. This tiny person with her scrunched-up face and her impossible smallness was mine. She was real. She was here. And I loved her so completely and immediately that it felt like my heart had been remade into something bigger. I named her Lily because lilies grow from the mud, because they survive, because even in the darkest soil, they find a way to bloom. Holding her for the first time, I remembered something from my childhood. I was maybe 5 years old, sick with a fever, and my mother stayed up all night with me. She stroked my hair and whispered, "You are stronger than you know, Paige." It was one of the only times I ever felt truly loved by her. I whispered the same words to Lily that night in the hospital, but I meant them differently. My mother had said them as comfort. I said them as a promise. I would make them true. I would raise this child to know she was strong, to know she was wanted, to know she would never be thrown away. I went back to work 3 weeks after giving birth, not because I wanted to, because I had to. Ms. Dolores arranged for shelter volunteers to watch Lily during my shifts, a rotating cast of grandmotherly women who clucked over my daughter like she was the most precious thing they had ever seen. Leaving Lily was the hardest thing I had ever done, harder than leaving Westbrook, harder than the 18 hours of labor. Every morning I kissed her forehead and walked out the door feeling like I was abandoning her, even though I knew I was providing for her. Some kinds of guilt do not respond to logic. Arthur noticed the change in me when I returned. I was harder, more focused, more desperate to succeed. I had a daughter now. Failure was not an option. He started giving me more responsibility, not just filing papers and answering phones, but real work. Client correspondence, market research, small projects that let me prove I could handle bigger ones. The different conversation he had promised was happening, slowly, one assignment at a time. 6 months into my training, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. I was reviewing property records for a client, standard due diligence work, tracing ownership histories and transaction details. A development project in Fairfield County required me to pull files going back several years. I was not expecting to find anything personal. I was just doing my job. Then I saw a name I recognized, Thornton Motors LLC. My father's company was listed in the ownership chain of a property connected to the deal I was researching. I stared at the document, trying to understand what I was looking at. Why would Warren Thornton have owned commercial real estate? His whole world was auto dealerships. I dug deeper, pulled more files, traced more connections. What I found made me sit down so fast I nearly missed my chair. 5 years before I was kicked out, Warren had tried to expand into commercial real estate. He had bought 3 properties with borrowed money, invested heavily in renovations, and lost everything when the market shifted. Total loss approximately $400,000. Money he did not have. The loan documents were in the next folder, and the name of the lender made the room spin around me. Victor Callahan, personal loan, $400,000. Dated 3 months before I ever met Derek. My father had been in debt to the Callahans for years before I got pregnant. The pressure Victor put on him, the deal to make me disappear, the $2 million that bought my erasure. It was not just about protecting Derek from scandal. It was about leverage, control, a debt that my father could never repay being called in at the perfect moment. The $2 million was not just a bribe, it was debt forgiveness plus payment. Victor had seen an opportunity to clean up his son's mess, while simultaneously tightening his grip on a business partner who owed him everything. I had been collateral damage in a war that started before I ever walked into Thornton Motors and met Derek Callahan. I closed the file and never mentioned it to Arthur. Some information is power, and I was learning to accumulate power quietly, patiently, the way my enemies never expected. On Lily's first birthday, I made 2 lists. One of everything I had, one of everyone who had counted me out. The first list, a rented studio apartment I had moved into 3 months earlier when I finally saved enough to leave the shelter. A job that was becoming a career, $8,400 in savings. A healthy daughter who laughed when I blew raspberries on her belly and reached for me every time I walked into the room. The second list was longer. My father, my mother, my sister, Derek, Victor, everyone who had decided I was worthless and thrown me away. I looked at both lists for a long time. The first one was short, but it was mine. Every item earned, every dollar saved, every moment of stability built from nothing. Lily's birthday party was a cupcake with 1 candle, just the 2 of us in our tiny apartment. I could not afford streamers or balloons or a proper cake, but I could afford to sit with my daughter on the floor and sing happy birthday and watch her smash frosting into her hair with complete joy. I blew out her candle for her and made a wish on her behalf. Not for money, not for revenge, just for time. Time to keep building. Time to get strong enough that no one could ever throw either of us away again. 3 months later, Arthur called me into his office with news that would change everything. He told me he was dying. Pancreatic cancer, 6 months to a year. Nothing to be done except get his affairs in order and decide what to do with the business he had spent 30 years building. He wanted to sell me his client list. For $1. The words did not make sense at first. I asked him to repeat them, certain I had misheard. $1 and a promise, he said. You maintain my reputation. You treat my clients right. You never cut corners. That is the price. I could not afford to buy your business, I told him. I have $8,000. Good thing I am only charging you $1. He slid a contract across the desk. I stared at it like it might bite me. Why me? You have colleagues, friends, people with actual credentials. Arthur smiled. The same kind smile he had given me the day he hired a pregnant teenager from a homeless shelter. I have people with degrees and no instincts, he said. You have instincts and no degree. I know which one I would bet on. You are hungrier than anyone I have ever trained. Hungry people do not fail, they just take longer to win. I signed the contract before I could talk myself out of it. $1 for a client list worth $300,000. $1 and a promise to prove that Arthur Finley had not made a mistake. He died 4 months later. I sat by his bed in the hospice and held his hand and thanked him for everything he had given me, for seeing something in me that no one else bothered to look for opening a door when everyone else was closing them. He squeezed my hand weakly. Prove them wrong, he whispered. Every single one of them. I promised him I would. And I meant it. I kept the name Thornton when I started my company, not because I was proud of it, because I wanted to redeem it. My father had made that name mean disappointment and failure and selling your own daughter for profit. I was going to make it mean something else, something he could never take credit for. Thornton Consulting, Commercial Real Estate Advisory. I had business cards printed with money I could not really afford to spend, and I handed them out to everyone I met like they were golden tickets. Most people took them politely and threw them away the moment I walked out of sight, but some people kept them, and that was enough. Arthur left me 23 clients. By the end of my first month on my own, only 4 had agreed to stay with me. The rest looked at a 19-year-old single mother with no degree and decided their properties deserved better representation. I could not blame them. On paper, I was a terrible bet. But those 4 clients were 4 more than 0, and I treated each of them like they were my only chance at survival. Because they were. My office was a converted storage closet in a building that smelled like mildew and broken dreams. One desk, one phone, one ancient computer that took 5 minutes to boot up. In the corner, I set up a portable crib for Lily because daycare cost money I did not have yet. She would sleep through client calls while I pretended to be running a professional operation, instead of a desperate gamble held together with hope and stubbornness. The first client meeting I took alone nearly ended my career before it started. Mr. Davidson was 60 years old and owned strip malls across 3 counties. He had been with Arthur for 15 years and was deeply skeptical about transitioning to someone young enough to be his granddaughter. Arthur was a professional, he said, looking around my cramped office with barely concealed disgust. You are a kid with a baby. Why should I trust my properties to you? I could have apologized, could have tried to charm him, could have promised to work harder than anyone else, which was true but not convincing. Instead, I opened a folder I had prepared the night before. Because I found 3 optimization opportunities in your Waterbury property that Arthur missed, I said. Shall I show you? I spread my analysis across the desk. Rent roll comparisons, market rate adjustments, lease renewal strategies that could increase his annual income by 8% without any capital improvements. I had spent 40 hours on that analysis, time stolen from sleep and sanity, betting everything on the chance that he would be impressed enough to stay. Mr. Davidson read in silence for 5 minutes. Lily made a small noise in her crib, and I held my breath, praying she would not wake up and destroy what little professional credibility I had managed to create. Arthur trained you? He asked finally. For 2 years. He nodded slowly. 1 quarter trial. You mess up, I am gone. I will not mess up, I said. I did not mess up. By the end of that first quarter, Mr. Davidson had referred me to 2 other property owners. By the end of the first year, I had 6 clients and enough revenue to move into a real office. It was not success yet. It was survival. But survival was the first step toward everything else. For 2 years, I did not sleep. I worked. There is a difference between surviving and living, and I chose surviving because it was the only option that kept food on the table and a roof over Lily's head. My daily routine was brutal. Wake at 5 in the morning, work until midnight, fit Lily in between like puzzle pieces, stealing moments with her whenever I could. Breakfast together before daycare, dinner together before bedtime, weekends at the park when I could afford to take a few hours away from the endless hustle. She learned to walk in my office, taking her first steps between my desk and the copy machine while I was on a call with a client. I muted the phone so he would not hear me crying. The sacrifices were enormous. No social life, no friends outside of work, no room for error or exhaustion or weakness. Every decision was about the business. Every dollar was reinvested. Every opportunity was seized with both hands because I knew there would not be a second chance. Some months I made rent. Some months I ate rice for a week so Lily could have real food. I learned to budget down to the penny, to negotiate every invoice, to never pay full price for anything. Poverty is an education that wealthy people never receive. It teaches you exactly what you can live without. By year 2, I had 12 clients and enough profit to hire my first employee. Her name was Carla, and she was 22 years old, fresh out of community college, hungry in the same way I had been hungry. I saw myself in her and gave her the same chance Arthur had given me. She worked harder than anyone I had ever met, and together we started building something real. Not everyone wanted to see me succeed. Marcus Webb decided I was a threat before I even knew his name. He was 45 years old, established in the Hartford commercial real estate market for 2 decades, and deeply offended by the idea that a young single mother with no pedigree was stealing clients from established professionals like himself. His response to my existence was a whispering campaign designed to destroy me before I could become real competition. The rumors reached me through a sympathetic client who thought I should know what was being said. Young and unreliable, unprofessional, probably slept her way into Arthur's client list. The words were designed to hit every insecurity I had, every vulnerability that came with being a woman in a male-dominated industry. My first instinct was to confront Marcus directly, to demand he stop spreading lies about me, to make a scene that would force him to acknowledge my existence and my worth. Then I remembered something Ms. Dolores had told me years earlier. Do not fight battles that do not advance your position. Fight the ones that do. Confronting Marcus would have given him exactly what he wanted. Drama, evidence that I was emotional and unprofessional, proof that the rumors were getting to me. Instead, I did something he never expected. I outworked him so completely that his lies became obviously ridiculous. When a client he wanted hired me instead, I delivered results 3 months ahead of schedule and 15% under budget. When he spread rumors about my competence, I published a market analysis that got picked up by a regional business journal. When he tried to undermine my reputation, I built one so solid that his whispers bounced off it like rain on glass. I ran into him once at a property showing. First face-to-face meeting since the rumors started. He walked over with that smug smile of a man who thinks he has already won. "Miss Thornton," he said, "I have heard you are doing well." Surprising, given your circumstances. I looked him straight in the eye. "Mr. Webb, I have heard you have been talking about me." Surprising, given that we have never met. His smile tightened. "Just looking out for the community. Some people are not built for this business." "You are right," I said. "Some are not. I will let you know when I meet one." I walked away without looking back. I found out later that Marcus Webb had connections to Victor Callahan. The sabotage was not random. Someone was still trying to make me disappear. They were about to learn I was done being erased. Year 3 was when everything changed, not because anything dramatic happened, but because compound interest applies to effort the same way it applies to money. All those late nights, all those sacrifices, all those small victories that seemed insignificant at the time started adding up into something bigger. My revenue crossed 7 figures for the first time. I hired 2 more employees. I moved into an office with actual windows and furniture that did not come from thrift stores. Industry publications started mentioning my name, calling me an emerging voice in commercial real estate, a young professional to watch. The same men who had dismissed me at networking events 3 years earlier started requesting meetings. The same colleagues who had snickered about the single mom with the baby in her office started referring clients to me. Success has a way of rewriting history, making everyone remember that they always believed in you, even when they did not. I kept a mental list of everyone who had helped me and everyone who had tried to stop me. The first list was short but precious. Ms. Dolores, Arthur, Teresa from the shelter, Mr. Davidson, who had taken a chance on a 19-year-old with too much confidence and not enough experience. The second list was longer, and I reviewed it often. Not for revenge, for motivation. Every name on that list was someone I was proving wrong every single day. At 22 years old, I was making more money than my father ever had. But I was not doing it to prove anything to him. I was doing it because I had learned something he never understood. The people who throw you away do not get to define your ceiling. Only you can do that. I met Nathan Reeves because of a building. I stayed because of everything else. Year 4 brought a major commercial development project that required architectural consultation. Nathan was 32, divorced, with a 6-year-old son named Ethan, who was the same age as Lily. He was the architect assigned to the project, and our first meeting was purely professional. All business, no personal conversation, both of us focused on deadlines and deliverables. The second meeting was different. He noticed the photograph of Lily on my desk and mentioned Ethan. 2 single parents, both building careers, both cautious about anything that might complicate our carefully constructed lives. We talked about our kids for 20 minutes and never touched the project agenda. Nathan's approach was unlike anything I had experienced before. Patient, professional, no pressure. He asked me to coffee to discuss the project, and we ended up talking about everything except the project. Our children, our divorces, or in my case, the absence of one. the challenges of raising kids alone while trying to build something meaningful. He did not push for more than I was willing to give, did not make promises he could not keep, did not try to charm his way past the walls I had built around myself. He just showed up, consistently, kindly, patiently. After Derek, I had convinced myself that I would never trust another man, that the cost of opening myself up was too high, the risk of betrayal too devastating. Nathan did not try to convince me otherwise with words. He convinced me with actions. Every day, every week, every month of steady presence that asked for nothing except the chance to keep showing up. 6 months into knowing him, I told Nathan everything. Not because I was ready, but because I needed to know if he would run. We were sitting in his car outside my office after a late meeting. Lily was with a babysitter. Ethan was with his mother for the weekend. There was nothing to interrupt us, no excuse to cut the conversation short. I told him about Warren and Judith, about Derek and the pregnancy, about the garbage bags and the Walmart parking lot and the shelter, about Victor Callahan's $2 million and the deal that had erased me from my own family. Every ugly detail, every shameful moment, every scar I had spent 6 years hiding from the world. When I finished, Nathan was quiet for a long time. I prepared myself for the distance that would follow, the polite excuses to see less of each other, the slow fade that always came when people learned too much about you. "Can I ask you something?" he said finally. "Yes." "Did you ever consider giving up? Every single day." "But you did not." "I could not. Lily needed me to not give up." Nathan nodded slowly. "That is who you are," he said. "That is all I need to know." He walked me to my door that night, did not try to kiss me, did not push for anything more than I was ready to give. "I am not going anywhere," he said. "I want you to know that." "Everyone says that," I told him, "I know. But I am going to show you instead of just saying it. And if that takes a year or 5 years or however long you need to believe me, then that is how long it takes." He did not promise me the moon. He promised me patience. After 6 years of pretty lies, an honest offer of time was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to me. By year 6, I had everything I had dreamed of in that shelter bunk: a thriving business with 8 employees, a savings account with 7 figures, a relationship with a man who had earned my trust through 2 years of consistent presence, a daughter who was happy and healthy and starting 1st grade, who had never known what it felt like to be thrown away. I started shopping for a home, not to impress anyone, but to give Lily stability, a place that was truly ours, that no one could take away. That would be her foundation while she grew into whoever she was going to become. The estate I found was more than I had been looking for. 8 acres in Greenwich, old money neighborhood, a statement property whether I wanted it to make a statement or not. The realtor looked at me like I did not belong there, like single mothers from homeless shelters did not buy $12 million estates. I wrote the check anyway. I signed the papers on my 24th birthday. 8 acres, 5 bedrooms, a gate with a security code. Not because I needed to prove anything to Warren or Victor or anyone who had thrown me away, because for the first time in my life I could. And no one was ever going to take that security away from me or my daughter. What I did not know, standing in my new driveway watching the sunset over my land, was that the past was not finished with me. Somewhere in Westbrook, my father's empire was crumbling, and he was about to come looking for the daughter he had sold. But first I was about to discover what really happened the night my father kicked me out. And it was not what I thought. I swore I would never go back to Westbrook. Then a $12 million deal made me reconsider my principles. A commercial development consortium wanted to redevelop the downtown area, and they needed someone with expertise in repositioning distressed properties. The project was exactly the kind of work I had built my reputation on. Walking away from it would have meant walking away from the biggest opportunity of my career. Nathan saw me staring at the project proposal for the 3rd night in a row, maps of Westbrook spread across my desk like evidence of a crime. "You have been looking at that for hours," he said. "What is stopping you?" I traced my finger along a street I used to know, The route from downtown to my childhood home, a path I had not traveled in 7 years. I grew up there, I told him. My family is there, or what is left of them. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that cut through all my excuses. You have built an empire, Paige. Going back is not retreating, it is conquering. He was right. I had spent 7 years running from Westbrook, building a new life as far from my father's shadow as I could manage. But shadows only have power in the dark. Maybe it was time to walk back into that town and show everyone what the stupid mistake had become. I called the consortium the next morning and accepted the project. Driving into Westbrook felt like entering a time machine that only moved in the wrong direction. Every street corner held a memory I had tried to bury. The high school where I had been invisible. The diner where Derek first asked for my number. The Walmart parking lot where I had spent my first night as a homeless pregnant teenager. I kept my eyes forward and did not drive past Thornton Motors or my childhood home. Some ghosts were better left undisturbed, at least for now. The project site was an abandoned industrial area on the edge of town, factories that had closed decades ago, leaving behind broken windows and graffiti and the kind of urban decay that developers see as opportunity. I met with the consortium's lawyers and investors and city officials, presenting my analysis in the same conference room where my father had probably made deals 20 years earlier. No one recognized my name. No one connected me to Warren Thornton or his failing dealership. I was just another consultant from out of town, professional and competent, and completely anonymous. After the meeting, one of the investors approached me. Older man, expensive suit, the kind of casual wealth that comes from generations of compound interest. Thornton, he said, reading my business card. Any relation to the dealership family? I kept my face neutral. Common name in Connecticut. No relation. He nodded, accepting the lie without question. Shame what happened to them. Warren Thornton used to be somebody around here. Heard his business is circling the drain. I filed that information away and changed the subject. Business can be unpredictable. Shall we discuss the zoning variance? Warren Thornton's business is circling the drain. 6 words delivered casually by a stranger, and suddenly my professional composure was fighting against 7 years of complicated satisfaction. I had known my father's empire would fall eventually. Men who sell their daughters for profit do not tend to make good long-term decisions. But hearing it confirmed by someone who did not know our history made it real in a way it had not been before. The truth was waiting for me in a basement archive, buried under 7 years of dust and municipal indifference. I was conducting due diligence on the development site, reviewing property records and ownership histories, standard work that I had done 100 times before. The county clerk's office kept their old files in a basement that smelled like mildew and forgotten paperwork. I was not expecting to find anything personal. I was just doing my job. Then I saw a name I recognized. Thornton Motors, LLC. My father's company was listed in the ownership chain of a parcel, now included in the development project. I stared at the document for a long time, trying to understand what I was looking at. Warren Thornton had owned commercial property in Westbrook, property he had never mentioned. Property that had apparently been transferred years ago under circumstances that were not immediately clear. I started pulling more files, tracing more connections, following a paper trail that led deeper and deeper into my family's secrets. What I found made me sit down so fast I nearly missed the chair. 7 years before I was kicked out, Warren had attempted to expand into commercial real estate. He had borrowed money to purchase 3 properties, invested heavily in renovations, and lost everything when the market turned against him. Total loss approximately $400,000. Money he did not have. Money he had borrowed from someone willing to extend credit to a man with more ambition than assets. The loan documents were in the next folder, and the name of the lender made the room spin around me. Victor Callahan, personal loan, $400,000. Dated 3 months before I ever met Derek. I sat in that dusty basement and felt my entire history rewrite itself. My father had been in debt to Victor Callahan for years before I got pregnant. The relationship between them was not business partners meeting as equals. It was creditor and debtor, master and servant. Victor had owned my father long before Derek ever walked into Thornton Motors. I kept digging, kept pulling files, kept tracing the connections that no one had ever bothered to look for because no one had ever cared enough to ask the right questions. The picture that emerged was worse than anything I had imagined. Warren's real estate investments had failed catastrophically. He owed Victor $400,000 with no way to repay it. The dealership was struggling, the debt was crushing. And then, like a gift from a very twisted god, his oldest daughter got pregnant by Victor's son. The $2 million was not just a bribe to make me disappear. It was debt forgiveness plus payment. Victor had seen an opportunity to clean up his son's mess while simultaneously tightening his grip on a business partner who was already in his pocket. The money was not about me at all. I was just a convenient excuse, a problem that could be solved in a way that benefited everyone except the pregnant teenager being thrown out of her home. I found a handwritten note in my father's file. Victor's elegant script, casual in its cruelty. Consider the matter settled. The debt is cleared. The additional funds are for your discretion. Ensure your daughter understands that silence is in everyone's best interest. Ensure your daughter understands that silence is in everyone's best interest. Like I was a loose end to be tied up. Like my entire existence was just a complication in a business deal between men who saw people as assets and liabilities. I sat in that basement archive for 4 hours, surrounded by documents that proved everything I had suspected and more. My father had not just sold me for $2 million. He had sold me to pay off a debt he already owed. I was not even an unexpected problem to be solved. I was a convenient opportunity to be exploited. That night in my hotel room, I asked myself the question I had been avoiding. Was Derek part of the plan from the beginning? The evidence was circumstantial but damning. Derek had appeared at Thornton Motors right when my father owed Victor the most money. He had pursued me specifically, insisted on secrecy, made promises he never intended to keep. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. But I had also seen Derek's face when I told him about the pregnancy. His panic had seemed genuine. His desperation to make the problem disappear had felt real. Maybe he was just a good actor, or maybe he was exactly what he appeared to be, a weak man used by his father without understanding the full scope of the manipulation. Either way, one thing was certain. Warren knew. Warren cooperated. Warren profited. My anger evolved from hot to cold as I sat in that generic hotel room processing what I had learned. This was not about emotion anymore. This was about understanding power. About knowing the full truth of what had been done to me and deciding what to do with that knowledge. The next morning, I found one more piece of the puzzle, and this one had my sister's fingerprints all over it. I searched for any connection between Miranda and the Callahans, not expecting to find anything substantial. Miranda had been 16 when I was kicked out, still in high school, barely a factor in adult business dealings. But there it was. Miranda Thornton listed as administrative contact on Callahan Corp documents from the summer before I got pregnant. A summer internship, her first real job, working for Victor Callahan's company while I was secretly dating his son. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Miranda had been inside Callahan Corp. She had access to information, to gossip, to the kind of casual office conversation where secrets get shared without anyone realizing their importance. She would have known about Derek's engagement to Brooke Whitmore. She would have known that her sister's secret relationship was doomed from the start. And she had said nothing, had warned me about nothing, had watched me fall in love with a man who was already promised to someone else and kept her mouth shut. I remembered the night I was packing to leave. Miranda standing in my doorway with that satisfied smile. You should have known your place. Not sadness, not guilt, satisfaction. Like she had been waiting for this moment, like she had helped make it happen. Miranda had told Warren about Derek and me. She was the informant. She was the reason Victor found out about the relationship before Derek could figure out how to end it cleanly. She was the match that lit the fire that burned my life to the ground. I sat in my rental car outside the county clerk's office and called Nathan. My voice was steady, but he knew me well enough to hear the earthquake underneath. My sister sold me out, I told him. What do you mean? She was working for the Callahans. She is the one who told my father about Derek. She is the reason everything happened the way it did. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. What are you going to do? Nothing. Yet. I am going to go home, hug my daughter, and figure out how to use this information at the right time. That does not sound like nothing. It is not. It is everything. But they do not need to know that yet. I drove home with enough evidence to destroy my father's reputation forever. Documents that proved he had sold his daughter to pay off a debt. Proof that my sister had been the informant who made it all possible. Ammunition that could burn the Thornton name to the ground if I chose to use it. I chose to keep it in my pocket instead. The temptation was real. I could leak the documents, expose Warren's deal with Victor, watch them all burn while I stood back and warmed my hands on the flames. The revenge would be satisfying. The justice would be poetic. The destruction would be complete. But what would it accomplish? Lily did not know any of this history. Burning Warren publicly would make it public for Lily, too. Someday my daughter would be old enough to search her family's name on the internet. Did I want her to find articles about her grandfather selling her mother for $2 million? Information is power. Power unused is still power. Power spent is gone. I filed everything away. Physical copies in my home safe. Digital copies encrypted on a drive only I could access. Not forgiveness, not moving on, just patience. Strategic patience. The kind that my enemies had never learned because they had never needed to wait for anything in their comfortable lives. Nathan found me that night on our back porch, staring at the darkness beyond the garden lights. "You have barely said anything since you got back," he said. "What is going on in that head of yours?" "I am deciding what kind of person I want to be." "And?" "I want to be the kind of person who wins. Not the kind who just hurts people who hurt me. There is a difference." "What is the difference?" "Hurting them feels good for a moment. Winning feels good forever. So you are going to wait. I am going to build. Keep building. And if they ever come to me, when they need something from me, I will have everything I need to look them in the eye and make a choice from strength, not weakness." Nathan's hand found mine in the dark. He did not try to talk me into forgiveness or out of anger. He just stood with me, solid and patient, while I processed the weight of everything I had learned. The fireflies were out that night. Lily called them fairy lights whenever she saw them in the garden. I watched them blink in the darkness and thought about all the secrets that had been hidden from me for 7 years. All the manipulation I had never seen. All the betrayal that went deeper than I had ever imagined. I did not know it then, but I would not have to wait long. 6 months later, a phone call would come that would flip every assumption I had about the Callahan family upside down. The voice on the other end was a woman I had never met. Victoria Callahan, Derek's mother, and she wanted to tell me secrets that even I had not uncovered in that basement archive. The past was not finished with me yet, but this time, I was ready for it. Victoria Callahan looked nothing like I expected. I had imagined cold elegance and designer armor, the kind of polished cruelty that wealthy women wear like perfume. Instead, I found a woman who looked like she had not slept in years. She sat across from my desk in my Greenwich office, her expensive clothes hanging wrong on her frame, her jewelry seeming too heavy for her thin wrists, her eyes carrying the weight of secrets she had kept for far too long. I had prepared for this meeting like I prepared for hostile negotiations, researched everything publicly available about Victoria Callahan. Set up the meeting on my territory, in my office, where I controlled every variable. Had security nearby in case this was some kind of elaborate trap orchestrated by Victor to finally silence the loose end he had paid $2 million to make disappear. But the woman sitting in front of me did not look like a threat. She looked like a survivor, and I recognized that look because I had worn it myself. She did not waste time with pleasantries. No small talk about the weather or the drive from Westbrook. She just looked at the photograph of Lily on my desk, and then she looked at me, and she said the words that made everything stop. "I know who you are. I know what my husband did. And I know about Lily." My hand moved instinctively toward the phone, ready to call security, ready to end this meeting before it went any further. "If you are here to threaten me or my daughter," I said, my voice cold and controlled, "we are done." Victoria shook her head slowly. "I am here to help you," she said. "Both of you, if you will let me explain. Why would Victor Callahan's wife want to help me?" She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, there was something in her voice that I recognized. The sound of a woman who had been silent for too long and was finally ready to speak. I knew that sound. I had made it myself once. "Because Victor Callahan has spent 40 years destroying everyone I love," she said, "and I am done watching." Victoria started talking, and within 5 minutes, everything I thought I knew about Derek Callahan became a lie. Her marriage to Victor had been arranged, a business alliance between families, negotiated when she was 22 and he was 35. She had no choice in the matter. Her father owed Victor's father money, and daughters were currency in the world they came from. She walked down the aisle toward a man she barely knew, and spent the next 4 decades paying for a debt that was never hers. Victor was controlling and cold from the beginning. He viewed marriage as an acquisition, not a partnership. Victoria was a possession, displayed when useful and stored when not. She learned quickly that disagreement was punished and obedience was expected. She became a ghost in her own home, moving through rooms without making sound, existing without being seen. 3 years into the marriage, she fell in love with someone else. His name was Thomas. He was kind and gentle, and everything Victor was not. The affair lasted 6 months before she ended it, terrified of what would happen if Victor discovered her betrayal. But something came from that affair, something she could not hide. "Derek," Victoria said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Derek is not Victor's biological son." I stared at her, trying to process the words. Derek Callahan, the man who had abandoned me, the man whose DNA my daughter carried, was not Victor Callahan's child. He was the son of a man named Thomas, conceived in an affair that had ended 30 years ago. "Victor found out when Derek was 2 years old," Victoria continued. "A blood test for something routine. The types did not match. He has known for over 30 years. And Derek does not know? Derek has no idea. No one knows. Victor made sure Thomas disappeared. And he made sure I understood that if I ever told anyone, Derek would suffer for it." The implications crashed over me in waves. Victor had known for decades that Derek was not his son. He had kept that secret, weaponized it, used it to control Victoria and punish Derek without Derek ever understanding why his father seemed to hate him. Derek's engagement to Brooke Whitmore was not about business, Victoria said. It was about punishment. She explained that Victor had somehow learned Derek was in love with someone. Me, though Derek had never spoken my name out loud. Victor's response was to accelerate the arranged marriage, to trap Derek before he could escape with the woman he actually wanted. Brooke Whitmore was chosen specifically because Derek felt nothing for her. The cruelty was intentional. Victor wanted Derek to be as trapped as Victoria had been. Derek complied because Victor threatened to cut him off entirely, to destroy any career prospects, to reveal a family secret that Derek assumed was about Victoria's affair. He did not know he was the secret. He did not know that the weapon Victor held over him was his own existence. "So Derek abandoned me because his father threatened him," I said. The words came out flat, not a question, not an accusation, just a statement of fact I was trying to understand. "Derek abandoned you because he was weak," Victoria replied. "I am not here to excuse him. I am here to explain that Victor orchestrated every moment of it. The timing of Derek meeting you, the pressure to end the relationship, the marriage to Brooke. All of it was Victor's design. But why? Why would Victor care about me at all? I was nobody. You were Warren Thornton's daughter, and Warren Thornton owed my husband money. In Victor's world, everything is leverage. I had spent 8 years hating Derek for his weakness. I did not expect to discover that his father had designed that weakness deliberately, cultivated it like a weapon to be used against everyone Derek might ever love. Derek was not innocent. He had still made the choice to abandon me. But he had made that choice while standing under his father's boot, never understanding why the pressure was so relentless. Then Victoria said something that made my blood freeze in my veins. "I have been watching you for 6 years." The words hung in the air between us. Watching. For 6 years. My skin crawled with the sudden awareness that I had never been as invisible as I thought. "After you left Westbrook," Victoria explained, "I became obsessed. The guilt was overwhelming. My family had destroyed your life. My son had abandoned you. My husband had paid for your erasure. I needed to know if you survived. I needed to know if the baby survived." She had hired a private investigator, tracked my journey from the shelter to the small apartment, to the growing business, to the Greenwich estate. She had watched from a distance, documenting every milestone, every struggle, every triumph, never intervening, never making contact, just watching, waiting, keeping a record of the life her family had tried to end before it could begin. She pulled a folder from her purse and set it on my desk. Inside were photographs, reports, 6 years of surveillance I had never suspected. "Lily is my only grandchild who shares my blood," Victoria said. "Not Victor's blood, mine, and Thomas's. She is the only good thing that came from any of this." I looked at the folder without touching it. 6 years of my life documented by a woman I had never met. Every moment I thought was private captured and filed away. The violation was profound. But so was the longing in Victoria's eyes as she looked at the photograph of Lily on my desk. "Why now?" I asked. "Why come to me now, after all this time? Because things have changed. Victor had a stroke 3 months ago. He is dying, and he is changing his will." The rest came out in a rush. Victor was diminished, but still lucid enough to modify his estate plans. His final act of cruelty was ensuring that Lily would never see a penny of his fortune. The new will explicitly excluded any children born outside of recognized marriages. Derek's legitimate children with Brooke would inherit everything. Lily, biologically his granddaughter, would be erased one last time. The fortune was substantial. Callahan Corp was worth approximately $80 million. Victoria had documentation proving Lily was Derek's biological child. DNA evidence that had been collected without my knowledge, probably from a discarded cup or a strand of hair, years ago when Victoria was building her surveillance file. Does Paige want to fight for Lily's inheritance? That was the question Victoria was asking without asking it directly. "Why would I want Victor Callahan's money?" I replied. "I have built my own." "This is not about the money," Victoria said. "It is about acknowledgement. It is about Lily's right to be recognized. Victor spent his whole life erasing people who inconvenienced him. Your daughter should not be one of them. And what do you get out of this?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears she did not try to hide. "I get to do one right thing before I die. I get to make sure that something of Thomas, something of me survives in this world. Lily is that something." She left me with documents and contact information for her lawyer and a decision I did not know how to make. $80 million. My daughter's birthright from a family that had thrown her away before she was born. I did not want their money. But did I have the right to make that choice for Lily? The argument circled in my head for hours. Pursuing the inheritance meant opening Lily's life to the Callahan family drama. It meant revealing Derek as her father, something I had avoided for 8 years. It meant accepting that my daughter was connected to people who had tried to destroy us both. But refusing the inheritance meant letting Victor win one more time, letting him erase Lily from the family record the same way he had erased me, letting his cruelty have the final word. Nathan found me that evening staring at the legal documents Victoria had left behind. "What did Victoria Callahan want?" he asked. I told him everything. His face cycled through shock and anger, and something that might have been understanding. "What are you going to do?" "I do not know. I built everything we have without their help, without their name, without their acknowledgement. Taking this feels like admitting I needed them after all." Nathan was quiet for a moment, or it feels like making them pay for what they did. There is a difference between needing someone and collecting what they owe. Collecting what they owe. That was one way to frame it. Victor Callahan had spent his whole life taking from people who could not fight back. Maybe it was time someone took something from him. I had not decided yet when Miranda's name appeared on my phone. My sister's voice, after 8 years of silence, sounded nothing like I remembered. The confident teenager who had smirked at my destruction was gone. In her place was someone older and frightened and desperate. "Paige, do not hang up. Please, I need to talk to you." My first instinct was to end the call, to reject her the same way she had rejected me. But curiosity held me still. What could Miranda possibly want after 8 years of nothing? "I need to see you," she said. "It is about Mom, and it is about Dad. Things are bad, Paige, really bad. And you thought calling the sister you helped throw away was a solution? I know you probably hate me. You have every right. But Mom is not okay. And Dad's business is about to collapse. I do not know what to do." There was genuine fear in her voice, not manufactured emotion, not the crocodile tears she used to summon on command. Real fear from someone who had never had to be afraid before. "We will talk about what you did and did not do when we meet," I told her. "I will send you an address." I hung up before she could respond. The satisfaction of controlling the conversation was small, but real. Miranda had called me, not the other way around. Whatever power dynamic we once had was reversed now. That night, I made 2 decisions. The first was about Victoria's offer. I would pursue the inheritance, not for the money, but for Lily's right to be acknowledged. Victor Callahan had spent his whole life erasing people. He did not get to erase my daughter. The money would go into a trust for Lily. She could decide what to do with it when she was old enough to understand where it came from. The second was about Miranda. I would meet her. I would hear what she had to say about our mother, but I would not reveal what I knew about her role in my destruction. Not yet. Information is power, and I was learning to deploy power at the right moment, not the satisfying one. I called Victoria Callahan the next morning and told her I was in. She cried. I did not. Then I sent Miranda an address for a coffee shop halfway between Greenwich and Westbrook. Neutral territory, controlled environment, 2 women from my past, both wanting something from me. Victoria wanted redemption. Miranda wanted rescue. I was not sure I had either to give. But I was going to hear them out. Because the girl who got thrown away with 2 garbage bags was gone. In her place was a woman who collected information, weighed options, and made choices from strength. My father's empire was crumbling. My sister was scared. My mother was suffering. And for the first time in 8 years, they needed me. The question was whether I would let them close enough to find out what I had become. Miranda was 17 minutes late. I knew because I counted every single one of them. I sat in an upscale coffee shop in Stamford, neutral territory, watching the door and calculating the cost of each passing moment. The table I had chosen was in the back corner, my chair positioned against the wall so I could see everyone who entered. 8 years of survival had taught me to never sit with my back to a door. I had dressed deliberately for this meeting, professional, expensive, successful. Every piece of clothing was armor, every accessory a reminder of what I had built while my sister was spending our father's money and pretending I did not exist. I wanted Miranda to see exactly what she had tried to destroy. I wanted her to understand that the girl she had watched pack garbage bags was gone forever. The waiting was its own kind of power. Every minute Miranda was late was a minute she spent knowing I was sitting here, deciding whether to leave, deciding whether she was worth my time. The tables had turned so completely that I almost laughed when I caught myself checking the expensive watch on my wrist. 8 years ago, I had nothing. Now I had everything. And my sister was the one begging for a meeting. I had reviewed what I knew before coming here. Miranda's internship at Callahan Corp the summer before I got pregnant. The timing that made her presence there impossible to ignore. The probability that she had been the one to tell our father about Derek and me. I had evidence now, documents with her name on them. Proof that could destroy whatever relationship she thought we might rebuild. But I was not going to reveal that yet. Nathan's advice echoed in my head from that morning. Do not let anger make your decisions. Let strategy make them. I was here to gather information, not to attack. The attack could come later, if I decided it was worth the effort. Miranda walked through the door at 17 minutes past the hour, and for a moment I did not recognize her. The confident teenager who had smirked at my destruction was gone. In her place was a woman who looked like she had been crying for days, thin in a way that suggested stress rather than health, designer clothes that did not fit quite right anymore, as if she had bought them when she was a different person. Eyes that darted around the coffee shop before finding me in the corner. She looked like someone had stolen the last 8 years from her face. The golden child, the favored daughter, the one who was supposed to inherit everything. And now she was walking toward me with the desperate hope of someone who had run out of options. Miranda sat down across from me without ordering anything. For a long moment neither of us spoke. We just looked at each other like strangers wearing familiar faces. I could see her taking in my appearance, my clothes, my jewelry, the quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly who I was and what I was worth. I wondered what she saw. I hoped it terrified her. "Paige," she finally said, "thank you for meeting me." I did not respond, just waited. Let her fill the silence with whatever she had come here to say. She started with small talk, the way people do when they are afraid of the real conversation. The coffee shop was nice. The drive had been long. She had heard good things about my company. I let her ramble for 2 minutes before cutting through the performance. "You did not call me after 8 years to discuss the decor," I said. "What do you want, Miranda?" Her face cracked immediately. The composure she had been trying to maintain shattered like glass, and underneath was something raw and frightened. She started talking about our father, the business failing, debts mounting, everything collapsing. Thornton Motors was bankrupt. The house was mortgaged 3 times over. Warren had not slept properly in weeks, and when he did sleep, he woke up screaming from nightmares about losing everything he had spent his life building. "And this concerns me how?" I asked. "You are his daughter. You are family. I was family 8 years ago, too." That did not seem to matter when he gave me 1 hour to pack my life into garbage bags. Miranda flinched. Actually flinched, like the words had physical weight. 8 years ago, she had watched me pack those bags with a smile. Now she could not even hear them mentioned without wincing. Something had changed in her. I was not sure yet if it was guilt or just fear. She made her pitch like someone who had rehearsed it in the mirror but forgot all the words once the curtain rose. Warren needed money. The family needed saving. I was successful. I had resources. I could make a single investment or loan that would barely impact my finances, but would save everything my father had built. The entitlement in her voice was breathtaking. She assumed I would feel obligated. She assumed I would want reconciliation badly enough to pay for it. She assumed that family was a debt I still owed, despite everything that had been done to me. "You could save everything," Miranda said, leaning forward with desperate intensity. "One investment, one loan, you would barely notice the money, but it would save our family." "Your family," I corrected. "Our family. You are still a Thornton." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said something that wiped the hope from her face. "I am a Thornton who built her own company. You are a Thornton who spent 8 years spending Daddy's money. We are not the same kind of Thornton." Her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "I know you are angry," she said. "You have every right to be. But holding on to that anger while Dad loses everything is not justice. It is revenge. You say that like revenge is a bad thing. The words hung in the air between us. Miranda stared at me like she was seeing someone she did not recognize. Maybe she was. The sister she remembered had been desperate for approval, willing to work without pay, eager to be useful even when no one appreciated her efforts. That girl was gone, burned away by garbage bags and Walmart parking lots and years of building something from nothing. I decided it was time for Miranda to understand exactly how much I knew. Before we talk about helping Dad, I said, let us talk about the summer before I got pregnant. Your internship. At Callahan Corp. The color drained from Miranda's face so fast I thought she might pass out. She knew immediately what I was referring to. She knew that her secret was not a secret anymore. I do not know what you mean, she tried, but the lie was pathetic. I laid it out for her. The documents I had found with her name on them. The timing that made her presence at Callahan Corp impossible to ignore. The probability that she had been the one to tell our father about Derek and me. The conclusion that was unavoidable once all the pieces were assembled. You told Dad about Derek and me, I said. You told Victor's people. You are the reason everything happened the way it did. I did not, she started, but her voice was shaking. I mentioned it once, but I did not know what they would do. You did not know that telling Victor Callahan's company that his son was secretly dating your sister would have consequences. You were 16, not 6. They said it was just office gossip. I did not know what they would do with the information. You did not care what they would do. You were jealous. I was finally getting attention from someone, and you could not stand it. Miranda started crying, actual tears streaming down her face, mascara running in dark lines toward her chin. She looked pathetic. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman who had helped destroy her sister's life and was only now facing the consequences. You wanted me gone, I continued, and you made it happen. So do not sit here 8 years later asking me to save the people who threw me away. You were one of them. She cried harder. I felt nothing. I remembered her smile in my doorway that night. Finally, she had said, like my destruction was a gift she had been waiting to unwrap. I was not going to comfort the woman who celebrated my erasure. Then Miranda said something I did not expect. Mom begged him not to do it. The words cut through my anger and made me pause. What? That night, Miranda said, her voice thick with tears. After you went upstairs to pack. Mom and Dad had a fight. I heard them through the door. Mom was crying, telling him he could not do this to you. She threatened to leave. She said she would go with you. I stared at her, trying to process this information. My mother had fought for me? My mother, who sat at the dinner table staring at her mashed potatoes while my father sentenced me to exile, had actually tried to stop it. What happened? Dad told her if she left, he would make sure she never saw either of us again. He said he had information about her past, something she did not want anyone to know. He said he would use it to destroy her if she tried to take his daughters away. Miranda wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing mascara further across her cheeks. Mom has been different ever since that night. Like something in her just stopped. She goes through the motions, but she is not really there anymore. Dad broke something in her. She could have left, I said, but my voice had lost some of its edge. She could have found me. She could have made a different choice. She was scared. She has always been scared of him. Being scared does not excuse watching your daughter get thrown away and doing nothing. No, Miranda agreed quietly, it does not. But maybe it explains it. I sat with that for a moment. I had spent 8 years hating my mother's silence. I did not expect to discover that her silence was a cage my father had built around her. It did not change what she did, but it changed how I understood it. Miranda reached into her purse and pulled out something I had not seen in almost a decade. A silver bracelet, delicate and antique, with a clasp that I recognized immediately. My grandmother's bracelet. My mother's mother. The one piece of jewelry that meant anything in our family. The bracelet I was supposed to inherit someday. the bracelet that should have been mine. "Mom asked me to bring this to you," Miranda said. "She wanted you to have something of hers. Something that was not tainted by Dad." I took the bracelet with trembling hands. The inscription on the inside was still there, worn but legible. "Strength is silent." My grandmother's motto. The words she lived by. "Mom also wanted me to tell you something," Miranda continued. "She wrote you letters, every birthday, every Christmas for 8 years. She never sent them because Dad would have found out. But she wrote them. Where are they?" "She kept them hidden. She said if anything ever happened to her, she wanted you to have them. She wanted you to know she never stopped thinking about you." My throat tightened. I did not let it show. 8 years of words my mother never had the courage to send. 8 years of apologies and love and regret, sealed in envelopes that never found their way to my mailbox. Miranda asked me one more time to help our father. She asked for money, for forgiveness, for a chance to rebuild what had been destroyed. I gave her my answer. "Tell Dad he is on his own," I said. "He created this mess. He can drown in it. Tell Mom I need time. I am not ready to see her, but I am not saying never." "And me?" Miranda asked. "What do I tell myself?" "You tell yourself that actions have consequences. You were 16 when you helped destroy my life. You are 24 now. That is 8 years you could have apologized, explained, reached out. You did not, so do not expect me to open my arms because you are finally desperate enough to try." Miranda nodded slowly. Something like acceptance in her eyes. Or defeat. Hard to tell the difference. "I am sorry, Paige," she said. "I know that does not fix anything. But I am." "You are right. It does not fix anything." She left the coffee shop looking smaller than when she arrived. I stayed for another 30 minutes, holding my grandmother's bracelet, thinking about strength and silence and whether they were really the same thing. I called Nathan from the parking lot. He answered on the first ring. "How did it go?" I told him everything. Miranda's confession, the truth about my mother, the bracelet, the letters that had never been sent. "So you are not helping your father," Nathan said when I finished. "But your mother?" "My mother is complicated. She is still a coward. But maybe she is a coward who loved me and was too weak to show it. Is that enough?" "I do not know. But I am not ready to close that door completely. Not yet." "What are you going to do now?" I looked at the bracelet still clutched in my hand, the inscription catching the afternoon light. "I am going to go home," I said. "I am going to hug our daughter and make dinner." Nathan paused. "Our daughter." I had not meant to say it that way, but it was true. Nathan had been more of a parent to Lily in 2 years than Derek had been in 8, than Warren had been to me in 18. "Yeah," I said. "Our daughter. Is that okay?" His voice was thick when he answered. "That is more than okay. That is everything." I drove home with my grandmother's bracelet on my wrist, and something in my chest that felt like possibility. The past was not finished with me yet, but maybe, just maybe, I was finally ready to finish with it. They came to my gate 4 times before I agreed to see them. I made them wait because I could. Because they had made me wait 8 years for an apology that never came. Because the man who had given me 1 hour to pack my life into garbage bags deserved to understand what it felt like to stand outside a door that might never open. The 4th visit was on a Tuesday in late October. The leaves were turning gold and red on my estate, the kind of autumn beauty that belongs in paintings and postcards. I was in my home office reviewing contracts when security called with the familiar words, "Ma'am, your parents are at the gate again. 4th time this week." I walked to the window and looked at the security monitor mounted on the wall. There they were, Warren and Judith Thornton, standing in the autumn chill like supplicants waiting for an audience with someone who held their fate in her hands, which I suppose was exactly what they were. My father had aged terribly. The stress of financial ruin was written across his face in lines that had not been there 8 years ago. His clothes were expensive but worn. the kind of quality that lasts but shows its age when money stops flowing. He kept checking his watch, that old habit of impatience, as if his time was still valuable, as if he still had somewhere more important to be. My mother stood behind him, smaller and frailer than I remembered, a ghost of the ghost she had always been. Her head was bowed. She was not looking at the camera or the gate or anything at all, just standing there in that same posture of surrender I had watched her wear my entire childhood. I checked the time. 10:14 in the morning. I made a decision. "Tell them I will be out in 52 minutes, I said into the phone. Marcus, my head of security, paused. 52 minutes exactly, ma'am?" "Exactly." I hung up and sat back in my chair, watching my parents on the monitor. They had no idea I could see them, no idea that every second they stood there was a calculation, a message, a payment for debts they probably did not even remember incurring. 52 minutes. 8 minutes less than an hour. 1 minute for every year of Lily's life that they had missed. My father would not understand the math. But I would know. And that was enough. I used the time productively. Reviewed the documents I had gathered over the past months. The evidence of my father's debt to Victor Callahan. The proof that the $2 million was not just a bribe, but a transaction. The records showing Miranda's internship at Callahan Corp the summer before everything fell apart. I was not planning to show them everything. That would be revealing too many cards at once. But I wanted the weight of what I knew sitting in my chest when I faced them. I wanted the power of information, even if I did not use it all. At exactly 52 minutes, I stood up from my desk. I checked my reflection in the mirror by the door. Not out of vanity, but out of strategy. I was dressed simply but expensively, the kind of quiet wealth that does not need to announce itself. I wanted my father to see what I had become. I wanted every step I took toward that gate to be a message he could not ignore. I found Lily in the living room with Nathan. She was showing him a drawing she had been working on all morning, explaining each figure with the serious intensity that 7-year-olds bring to their art. "I will be right back, sweetheart," I told her. "I need to talk to some people outside." She looked up at me with curious eyes. "Who is it, Mommy?" I glanced at Nathan. He gave me a small nod of support. "Whatever you decide," his eyes said. "I am here. Just some people who need to speak with me," I said. "Stay inside with Nathan, okay?" She nodded and went back to her drawing. Content. Secure. Completely unaware that her grandparents were standing at our gate, waiting to see if they were worth 60 seconds of her mother's time. The walk from my front door to the gate was long. I had designed it that way. A sweeping driveway lined with mature trees, the house visible but distant, the kind of approach that gives visitors time to appreciate what they are approaching. I walked slowly, deliberately, letting my parents watch me come closer, letting them see the estate behind me, the gardens, the evidence of a life they had no part in creating. When I reached the gate, I stopped. The iron bars stood between us, solid and immovable, a boundary that I controlled. My father straightened up immediately when he saw me. He attempted a smile that looked painful on his face. This man who had screamed that I was a stupid mistake was now trying to look warm and fatherly. The performance was so bad it would have been funny if it was not so tragic. My mother finally raised her eyes. They were red. She had been crying recently, maybe for days, maybe for years. It was hard to tell with her. For a long moment, none of us spoke. I let the silence stretch. I wanted them to break first. I wanted to see who they were now, 8 years after they had shown me exactly who they were then. My father broke first. Of course he did. "Paige," he said. His voice was rougher than I remembered, worn down by stress and age and the weight of his own failures. "Thank you for seeing us. We have been wanting to talk to you. There are things we need to explain." I did not respond, just looked at him. Let him keep talking. Let him dig whatever hole he was about to dig. He launched into a speech he had clearly rehearsed, words about family and misunderstandings and water under the bridge. He talked about the past being the past and the importance of moving forward. He mentioned that everyone makes mistakes, that holding grudges was not healthy, that blood was thicker than any disagreement. He even said he was proud of what I had built. Proud. The audacity of that word in his mouth. I let him talk for almost 3 minutes. 3 minutes of hollow words and empty promises, rehearsed in his mirror, polished for this moment. He was sweating by the end despite the cool October air. When he finally stopped talking, I spoke for the first time. "You called me a stupid mistake," I said. My voice was calm, controlled, the voice of a woman who had spent 8 years preparing for this exact moment. "You told me I was nothing. You gave me 1 hour to pack my life into garbage bags, not suitcases. Garbage bags. Because that is exactly what you thought I was worth." My father's face shifted. The prepared smile flickered. "Paige, that was a long time ago. I was angry, I was not thinking clearly. Things were said that should not have been said. Things were said," I repeated. "No, money was exchanged. $2 million to be precise." The color drained from his face. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. They had not expected me to know. They had underestimated me. Again. For the last time. "I do not know what you think you know," my father started. "I know everything," I cut him off. "I know about the $400,000 debt you owed Victor Callahan before I ever met Derek. I know the $2 million was not just a bribe to make me disappear. It was debt forgiveness plus payment. I know you did not kick me out because you were ashamed of me. You kicked me out because Victor Callahan made you an offer and you did the math. You decided your pregnant daughter was worth less than a business deal." My father's composure cracked completely. His face cycled through denial and shock and something that might have been shame if he was capable of feeling it. "You do not understand the pressure I was under," he said. "The debts, the business, everything was falling apart. Victor had me by the throat. I did not have a choice." "You had a choice," I replied. "You could have chosen your daughter. You chose the money instead." "I was trying to save the family," he insisted. "I was trying to protect everyone." "Everyone except me," I said. "I was not family that night, was I? I was a liability, an asset to be liquidated." He opened his mouth to argue, but before he could speak, my mother did something she had not done in 8 years. She stepped forward. She spoke. "He is right that he was under pressure," she said. Her voice was small but clear. "He is wrong about everything else." My father turned to her with a warning look. "Judith, do not." But she did not stop. She kept talking, the words coming out like they had been trapped inside her for years. "I should have left him," she said. "That night. I should have walked out with you. I packed a bag. I was ready. I told him I was going to leave, going to find you, going to choose my daughter over my husband." My father's face darkened. "We discussed this," he said through clenched teeth. "We agreed." "You threatened me," my mother replied, and there was something in her voice I had never heard before. Backbone. After 60 years of silence, she was finally standing up. "You said if I left, you would make sure I never saw either of my daughters again. You said you had information about my past. You said you would use it to destroy me." She turned back to me, her eyes filled with tears. "I was a coward, Paige. I chose my comfort over my daughter. I chose his threats over your safety. I will never forgive myself for that. And I do not expect you to forgive me either." I looked at my mother for a long moment. This woman who had been a ghost my entire childhood, who had slipped me money in secret but never protected me in public, who had watched me get thrown away and done nothing to stop it. "You are right," I said. "I do not forgive you." She nodded, accepting the verdict. "I know, but I needed you to hear that I tried. Not hard enough, not bravely enough. But I tried." "Miranda told me about the letters," I said. 8 years of words you never sent." My mother's eyes widened. She did not know Miranda had told me. "Every birthday," she whispered. "Every Christmas. I wrote them all. I just never had the courage to mail them." "No," I agreed. "You never did." My father tried to regain control of the conversation. He straightened his shoulders. summoned what remained of his authority. "Paige," he said, his voice harder now, "whatever happened in the past, the fact remains that we are your family. We are your parents. And right now, we need your help." He laid out the situation, the bankruptcy, the foreclosure, the complete collapse of everything he had spent his life building. He needed money. He needed a bailout. He needed the daughter he had thrown away to save him from drowning in the consequences of his own choices. I listened without expression. Let him finish his pitch. Let him empty himself of every desperate argument. When he was done, I shook my head slowly. "I am not going to help you," I said. "Not because I want you to suffer, but because I do not owe you anything. You made that clear 8 years ago when you gave me 1 hour to pack my life into garbage bags. The debt between us was settled the moment I walked out your door." My father's face contorted with anger. "After everything I did for you," he shouted. "After all those years of raising you, feeding you, putting a roof over your head, this is how you repay me? You mean the years of making me work for free at your dealership? The years of telling me I was not good enough? The years of treating me like a disappointment because I was not the son you wanted? Those years?" The anger bounced off me like rain on glass. I had spent 8 years preparing for this moment. His rage had no power anymore. He tried guilt next. "We are old, Paige. We have nowhere to go. You are our only child who has the means to help." I felt nothing. The guilt he was trying to summon had been burned out of me years ago. Finally, he tried something that looked almost like genuine remorse. His voice cracked, his eyes got wet. He said he was sorry. He said he had been wrong. He said he had made the biggest mistake of his life. "Too little," I said. 8 years too late. I told him I hoped he found peace, but he would not find it here. Not at my gate, not in my home, not in my life. My mother spoke one more time. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Can I at least see her?" she asked. "Just once. Just to see my granddaughter." For one moment my heart wavered. This was my mother, the woman who had braided my hair when I was little, before my father decided that was too feminine, the woman who had slipped me money through the years, secret gifts of love she could not express openly. Then I remembered the letter she had written and never sent. The years of silence, the choices she had made over and over to stay with him instead of finding me. "Lily does not know you exist," I said. "Keeping it that way is the kindest thing I can do for her." My mother's face crumpled. My father put his arm around her, still trying to maintain some dignity, still playing the role of protective husband even though he had protected nothing and no one. Behind me, I heard the screen door open, small footsteps on the gravel. My heart stopped. Lily came walking up beside me, her curiosity having finally overcome Nathan's supervision. She took my hand and looked at Warren and Judith with the innocent assessment of a child who has never known cruelty. "Mommy, who are they?" My father's face transformed. Hope and longing and something desperate reaching toward the granddaughter he had never met. He opened his mouth to speak. "No one important, sweetheart," I said before he could get a word out. "They were just leaving." "Oh," Lily said. She waved at them with the casual friendliness of a well-loved child. "Bye!" Then she turned and walked back toward the house, completely unbothered. My father watched her go with an expression of physical pain. "She is beautiful," my mother whispered. "She looks like you." "She looks like herself," I replied. "And she will never know what it feels like to be thrown away. That is my legacy, not yours." I told them to leave. My father argued. My mother did not. She just reached into her purse and placed an envelope on the ground beside the gate. No words, just a look that held apology and grief and something that might have been pride. They turned and walked back to their car. An older vehicle, showing the kind of wear that comes from deferred maintenance and stretched budgets. They drove away slowly, like they were hoping I would change my mind. I watched until they disappeared around the corner. Then I bent down and picked up the envelope my mother had left behind. My name written in her handwriting. Something inside that was not money. I could feel the shape of papers. I stood at my gate until the sun started to set, holding that envelope, not ready to open it. "Mommy," Lily called from the house. "Nathan says dinner is ready." I tucked the envelope into my pocket and walked back toward my family. The real one. The chosen one. The past could wait until tomorrow. But I knew, holding that envelope, that whatever was inside would matter, would change something, would be the last word my mother might ever give me. I waited until Lily was asleep to open my mother's envelope. Some grief needs to be felt in private. Nathan offered to stay with me, but I needed to do this alone. Whatever was inside that envelope was between my mother and me, and I was not ready to share it with anyone until I understood it myself. The house was quiet. Lily's soft breathing drifted down the hall from her bedroom. Nathan had gone home after dinner, understanding without being told that tonight I needed space. The only light in my office came from the lamp on my desk, casting everything in warm shadows that felt appropriate for what I was about to do. The envelope was heavier than it looked, not with physical weight, but with years. 8 years of words that had never found their way to me. 8 years of a mother's guilt and love and regret, sealed in paper and hidden from a husband who would have destroyed them if he found them. My hands were steady as I opened it. I had survived worse than paper. Inside were not one letter, but dozens. Thin sheets covered in my mother's careful handwriting, some yellowed with age, some newer and crisp. I spread them across my desk and counted. 47 letters, every birthday, every Christmas, random dates that must have been days when the guilt became too heavy to carry without putting pen to paper. The first letter was dated 1 week after I was kicked out. "Dear Paige," it began, "I do not know if you will ever read this. I do not know if I will ever have the courage to send it, but I need to write to you because the silence is killing me. I read every letter that night, all 47 of them. And somewhere around letter 23, I started crying and could not stop. The letters were not apologies, they were conversations. My mother had written to me as if I could hear her. She told me about her days, about the emptiness in the house after I left, about the way my father refused to speak my name and how she whispered it to herself when she was alone. She asked me questions she knew I could not answer. "Are you safe? Are you eating enough? Is the baby healthy?" Year 1 was desperate and guilty and barely coherent. The handwriting was shaky, the words running together, the pain bleeding through every sentence. Year 3 was more composed, but sadder. My mother had learned to live with what she had done. She had not learned to forgive herself. Year 5 held a surprise. She wrote about leaving Warren, about almost doing it, about packing a bag and getting in her car and driving halfway to Hartford before turning around. She could not go through with it. She was too scared, too broken, too convinced that she had lost the right to be my mother the night she let me walk out the door. Year 7 made me stop breathing. "I found your company website today," she wrote. "Thornton Consulting. You kept the name. You made it mean something good." I cried for an hour. Not because I am sad. Because you did it, Paige. You became everything your father said you could not be, and you did it without us. Because of us. I am so proud of you. I know I have no right to be. But I am. The most recent letters were different, written in the months since she learned I was back in Connecticut, since she heard through Miranda that I had built an empire, since she started hoping that maybe somehow she would get a chance to see me again. The final letter in the stack was not addressed to me. It was addressed to Lily. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. My mother had written to her granddaughter, knowing she might never deliver it, knowing it might be the only words she ever got to give the child she had never met. "Dear Lily," the letter began, "you do not know me. You might never know me. But I want you to know that I have loved you since before you were born." She explained who she was, why she was not there, why she should have been. She did not make excuses. She called herself a coward. She admitted she had failed. "Your mother was brave before she knew she needed to be," she wrote. She was always the strongest person in our family, even when no one else could see it. Your father, your grandfather, they were too busy looking at what she was not to see what she was. But I saw. I always saw. I just did not have the courage to say it out loud. She told Lily about the mistake. I let fear make my choices, she wrote. Do not ever let fear choose for you. Be brave. Be kind. Be the person your mother is raising you to be. And if you ever wonder whether you were wanted, know this: you were wanted by everyone who mattered, including me, even though I failed to show it. The closing line broke something open in my chest. If your mother ever decides to share this letter with you, tell her I am sorry. Tell her I loved her every day, even when I could not say it. Tell her she was never a mistake. She was the best thing I ever did. I just did not deserve to keep her. I sat at my desk holding that letter until the sun came up. Crying, thinking, processing 8 years of words my mother had never had the courage to send. I did not forgive her. I was not sure I ever would. But I understood her differently now. She was weak. She was scared. She had made choices that could not be unmade. But she had also loved me. In secret, in silence, in letters that filled her drawers while I filled my life with success and purpose, and a daughter who would never know what it felt like to be thrown away. I kept the letter to Lily. Someday, when she was old enough, I would decide whether to share it. Not today. Not for years, but someday. Over the next 3 weeks, several things happened that felt like the universe finally balancing its books. I sent my mother a note through Victoria Callahan's lawyer. Short and simple, I read the letters. I am not ready to see you, but I am not saying never. Give me time. The response came back through the same channel. She had cried when she got my message. She understood. She would wait forever if she needed to. My father got nothing. No note, no acknowledgement, no door left open. Warren Thornton had sold his daughter for $2 million. He had made his choice 8 years ago. He could live with it now. Miranda called once to tell me that Warren was selling everything. The dealership was gone. The house was being foreclosed. He was moving into a small apartment on the other side of Westbrook. A man who had once owned half the town now reduced to renting a 2-bedroom unit in a building he would have mocked 10 years earlier. I listened to the update without comment. I felt nothing. That chapter was closed. The inheritance case moved forward. Victoria's lawyers were excellent, and Victor Callahan was too sick to put up much of a fight. The DNA evidence was undeniable. Lily was officially acknowledged as Derek's biological daughter, entitled to her share of the Callahan estate. Victoria called me when the court ruling came through. She was crying. She had spent 40 years watching her husband destroy everyone she loved. Now, finally, she had managed to save one person from his cruelty. He cannot erase her, Victoria said through her tears. He spent his whole life making people invisible, but your daughter exists. She is real, and she will inherit what is rightfully hers. I thanked her, not for the money, for the acknowledgement, for refusing to let Victor have the final word. Derek found out about Lily 3 days after the court ruling, Victoria told him. His response was exactly what I expected: shock, guilt. A desperate need to make things right that was 8 years too late. He reached out through lawyers, wanted to meet Lily, wanted to be involved, wanted to play the role of father now that the courts had made his daughter's existence official. I sent him a single letter through my attorney. I did not attack him, did not blame him, just stated facts. You chose to leave before she was born. You had 8 years to find out what happened. You did not look. Do not pretend you want to be a father now that the courts have made her existence official. I told him Lily had a father. His name was Nathan. He had earned that title by showing up every single day for 2 years. Derek did not get to skip 8 years and then claim a seat at the table. If Lily ever wanted to find him when she was an adult, that would be her choice. Until then, he was not to contact us again. He did not reply, did not contest, just disappeared again, the way he had always done when things got difficult. Victoria told me later that his second marriage was already failing, that he drank too much, that he had never become anything. I felt nothing. He was a stranger who happened to share DNA with my daughter. That was all. Nathan proposed on a Tuesday evening in our backyard, with Lily watching from the window and pretending she was not. He asked me to walk in the garden after dinner. The autumn flowers were still blooming, and he had installed string lights that made everything glow like something from a fairy tale. Lily was suspiciously absent from the house, claiming she needed to do homework that I knew she had finished hours earlier. Nathan was not a man who made speeches. He did not get down on one knee or recite poetry or make grand gestures. He just took my hands and looked at me with those steady eyes that had been looking at me the same way for 2 years. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you and Lily," he said. "Will you let me?" I said yes before he finished asking. I did not need to think about it. Did not need time to decide. This man had shown up every single day for 2 years, had never made a promise he did not keep, had earned my trust through patience and consistency, and the quiet dedication that matters more than grand romantic gestures. The ring was simple and elegant, perfect. He slid it onto my finger as the screen door burst open, and Lily came running out screaming. She said, "Yes!" She said, "Yes!" Nathan's son Ethan was right behind her, both of them clearly having been stationed as lookouts for this exact moment. We ended up in a group hug in the garden, 4 people who had found each other through circumstance and chosen to become a family. Lily's 8th birthday party was small. Just the people who mattered. Nathan and Ethan, Carla from my office, a few of Lily's friends from school, and one guest who had traveled from Florida specifically for this occasion. Ms. Dolores Washington was 70 years old now. Her hair was completely gray, and she walked with a cane she claimed was just for show. But her eyes were still sharp, and her voice still carried the same no-nonsense authority that had saved my life 9 years earlier. She pulled me aside during the party, watching the children play in the garden, watching the life I had built unfold around us. "Look at what you did, girl," she said. "Look at what you built from nothing." I looked, the estate, the business, the daughter blowing out candles on her birthday cake, the man who had earned his place by my side, the friends and colleagues and employees who had become my chosen family. "You remember what I told you in that shelter?" Ms. Dolores asked. "2 choices," I said. She nodded. "You chose right." Lily opened her presents surrounded by the people who loved her. One box had no card. Inside was my grandmother's bracelet, the one my mother had sent through Miranda. I had cleaned it and resized it for a child's wrist. "It is so pretty," Lily exclaimed. "Who gave me this?" "Someone who loved you from far away," I told her. "You can wear it until you are old enough to hear the story." She put it on immediately. The inscription caught the light. "Strength is silent." My grandmother's words. My mother's failed motto. My daughter's inheritance. Maybe strength was silent. Or maybe silence was just what scared people called their fear. I had learned that real strength sometimes meant speaking up, sometimes meant walking away, sometimes meant standing at a gate and telling the people who threw you away that they were no longer welcome in your life. That night, after the party, after Lily was asleep with her new bracelet still on her wrist, I sat in my garden and finally let myself feel it all. 9 years since I was thrown away with garbage bags. 9 years of building, fighting, surviving, proving every single person who counted me out absolutely wrong. I thought about what I had lost. A family that did not deserve the name. A father who measured my worth in dollars and found me lacking. A mother who loved me in secret but never in public. A sister who celebrated my destruction. I thought about what I had gained. Everything that actually mattered. The final accounting was clear. Thornton Motors was gone. Warren lived in a small apartment, alone with the consequences of his choices. Miranda was working retail. Her comfortable life collapsed along with her father's empire. Judith was waiting, hoping for a door that might open someday. And me? I owned an 8-acre estate. I ran a company worth millions. I was raising a daughter who had never felt unwanted for a single day of her life. I was engaged to a man who had earned my trust through 2 years of showing up. Not a single piece of it came from Warren or Judith Thornton. Not a single success was built on their support. Everything I had built from the ashes of what they destroyed. My father called me a stupid mistake once. He was right about one thing. I was unexpected. But I was never a mistake. I was a phoenix he tried to burn before I could rise. I rose anyway, not because I am special, not because I am stronger than anyone else, but because I had a daughter who needed me to rise. And that was enough. That was everything. Those who throw away their children do not get to claim their success. I built my empire without them. I raised my daughter without them. I found love and family and happiness without them. And when they finally came to my gate, broken and desperate and begging for the help they had refused to give me, I was able to look them in the eye and make a choice from strength instead of weakness. I chose myself. I chose my daughter. I chose the family I built instead of the one I was born into. And I have never regretted it for a single moment. This is where my story ends. But maybe yours is just beginning. If you are watching this and you have been thrown away by family, by someone you loved, by people who should have protected you, I want you to know something. You are not what they called you. You are not the names they gave you. You are not the value they assigned you. You are the person you choose to become, and no one can take that choice away from you. Thank you for staying with me through all of this. I know it was a long journey, but some stories need time to tell properly, and I hope this one was worth your time. If anything I said today resonated with you, if you have ever felt thrown away or written off or told you were not enough, I would love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me your story. Or just tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. I read every single comment, everyone, and they mean more to me than you know. If this story moved you, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. I have more stories like this one coming. Stories about people who refused to stay down, who built something beautiful from broken pieces, who proved everyone wrong without ever saying, "I told you so." And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, someone going through their own garbage bag moment, share this video with them. Sometimes the thing we need most is knowing we are not alone. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now, and do not miss the best part. I promise you will love it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring about a girl who had nothing and the woman she became. I am so glad you are part of this journey. I will see you in the next one. This story is fictionalized for dramatic effect.